Later we can get a little, oops, maybe we can get a little glimpse of the corgi puppies later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at Debbie.
I want to see puppies. Or kittens, anything small. Well, good morning, everybody. It is December 13th. I have children in the house. It is 9 days away from Christmas Eve, 8 days from Christmas Day. I have my ugly Christmas vest on today in spirit. But welcome to Provider Support meeting today. The subcommittee, we are so excited to have everybody here today. The last meeting of the year 2023. I can't believe it's the end of the year. But we want to make sure that everybody today gets a chance to look over the protocols in the last few meetings. We want everybody to make sure that you have a chance to talk, but to make sure that you are not only talking, but making sure you're keeping your questions and comments to a short amount of time of the meeting, as we are all on a respected time frame today. And also make sure you're muting yourself so we don't hear what's going on in your background. Feel free to use the question box when you have questions. That's usually the best way to get your questions across. And then one of the DCYF team members can also, she jots those down for a later time as well. Yeah, make sure you look over those protocols.
We're very excited to have interpretation services today. Thank you for being here, Brian.
Yeah. So the purpose today is for our group to be able to discuss and advise on all our services around childcare. It's including but not limited to the licensing policies, the WAC changes, rules, publishing calendar, agency request legislations, admin concerns, subsidy rules, rates, whole family health, etc. Everything that we do on a daily basis that surrounds childcare. So if you guys have any other questions, about that, again, put it in the chat box, and one of us will be able to get back to you as soon as we can. I see in the chat box, there's already quite a few saying good morning and saying where everybody's from. So introductions, yes. Share your name, where you're located, your role. I know there's lots of people from around the whole entire state already saying hello. I see somebody, Linda, from the Bezos Academy. I am so excited to maybe chat with you later. But yeah, so the October meeting minutes were sent out. So there's copies of those. If you have questions, definitely raise your hand or go ahead and put them in the chat box. Jessica has just posted them in the chat box, as well as our October meetings minutes as well. So did anybody have questions? Did they want to go over any of those meeting minutes, or had something they wanted to say from last meeting but didn't get a chance? And then do we want to, how many people do we have? Do we want to go around and say good morning, or just keep everybody in the chat box this morning and introduce themselves? Julie, what do you think?
Well, we only have till 9:15, so maybe we can keep it moving.
Okay, well, I'll just quickly say, between Julie and I'm Katie Hudkins, and I am one of two chairs of the Provider Support Subcommittee, and I own Treetop Village, and I am over on the peninsula. And then Julie, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm Julie Schroth. I'm also over in Kitsap County. I own Creative Kids Learning Center. Glad to be here. Glad to see everyone today. Thanks.
All right, are there any hands raised? Any questions? Everybody's so quiet this morning.
I think in looking over the minutes, I think it's pretty clear that we need to have the um, the new training site folks back, and at the same time, probably the merit folks, because there's always questions that come up that overlap.
Yeah. I think that, I know for the training site, we thought it was going to be up for some part of 2023, and now it's being pushed back to 2024. And I was just on merit the other day, and I'm trying to become a STARS trainer right now. And it kind of is throwing you back and forth and giving mixed messages about what you're supposed to do. So I think definitely that's something we should have them back for our first meeting of 2024. So if anybody has thoughts on that, if they have any issues or if they have any questions about Develop coming or any updates of Develop coming, of anybody that's on right now, that would be great.
Nicole Rose here about Develop and the pushback of the date. There were some other things that we needed to do prior to the Develop release. It had to do with some other work in the state, and so that's why it was pushed back a little bit. We had to do what's called some remediation to be ready for another system, and so it pushed out the release of that Develop timeline. But I'm happy if people want to put questions in the chat or in the next planning meeting, happy to gather those so that we can bring back at the beginning of the year all the things that you all want to talk about.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to see what it looks like. I think that combining all these online systems together, we are all looking forward to it. And especially having the STARS training on there, I think is going to be a huge benefit for every single provider across the state. So any update would be awesome. Okay. Was there any other questions from the meeting minutes from anybody? See any else in the chat boxes? Everybody's so quiet today.
I think it's nice when the minutes are shared on the screen.
Yeah. Not everybody has a chance to get them. Susan's asking someone to point her to the best source to find all the statutes that authorize the powers and responsibilities of DCYF. Trying to get a better understanding of the statutes versus WACs that apply to licensed childcare.
Maybe that's something Nicole can work on.
Yeah, that's a big question. That's a very big question, Susan.
I'm going to look to my colleague Ruben, who is also on who is our Assistant Secretary of Licensing, who can talk about the licensing specific pieces. Ruben.
Thanks, Nicole. Good morning, everyone. Like I said, Nicole said, Ruben Rees, I'm the Assistant Secretary for Licensing Division. So good to see everyone. So yeah, Susan, let me see what's on our public facing website right now regarding kind of our rules in licensed childcare, like, with RCW versus WACs, and let me get back to you on that, unless Debbie and Travis know offhand.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I just hear often, oh, we can't do anything, that's a statute, we have to make legislative changes. And then, so I want to know, where's the line between what we have the ability to change through the rules process and what we have to do to change the rules process through statute. I hope that made sense.
It does. And just, you know, and then also, Susan, we have, you know, the federal CCDF requirements too, right? That come into play as well.
Sure.
So,
But I
yeah,
think
federal, state,
the more
and
we
last.
know, the better we understand, and the better we can speak the language to make the childcare system in Washington better.
And it's
Thank you.
all, I mean, it should be all public facing, right? So
Yep.
then maybe we should probably update our site. Thanks,
Thank
Susan.
you.
All right. Um,
I want to
one of
mention
the
that's
other-
it's an interesting question that Susan posed, and I'm thinking now about, I filed a petition to amend a WAC recently. I haven't heard back yet, but it's about the requirement that everybody have their high school diploma. And I would hope that when the response comes, if that's like a federal rule or something, that they'll let me know, because I wouldn't know. I just looked at the WAC, and so anyway.
Yeah, I think that we, you know, as providers, we look at the WACs constantly. I mean, and especially with the 2019 changes and with COVID coming off of, you know, kind of the moratorium and everything, I know that we're constantly looking at the WACs and that we're seeing the changes of 2019 and how the verbiage has changed in so many of the WACs. And that we're coming up with the questions of, well, is this the federal? Was this the state? And it's truly coming up daily with all of us providers, you know, whether it's here, it's in Tri-Cities, it's in Bellingham, we're hearing it from all over. So yeah, just to have that clarity, it helps us, because then we're not coming at DCYF with all these questions constantly to you guys. And it would just, you know, keep that balance of like, if we know a little bit more, then there's not as, you know, as much resistance and questioning, you know, in the middle there. Just like with the background checks coming up that we're going to talk about today, you know, the more we understand, you know, helps us, helps you guys. So we're not questioning it and having so much pushback, but there's always going to be pushback with the background checks. So, okay. So we also, last meeting, talked about the trauma-informed care, and that DCYF will be we had asked if they would be providing trainings, the mental health consultants. Had anybody had any questions upon that? I know with early achievers and that side, the mental health's coming out, but just having that complex needs fund is coming out to really help that. And so if anybody had questions, I know the complex needs grant is closing January 3rd, I believe. So it's coming up soon, but for having that extra help with the complex needs, for mental health in your school, having extra hands, you know, that's where that can help us providers. There's also going to be help with submitting that complex needs grant through the Imagination Institute. I know there's quite a few resources on the DCYF website for us providers to get help from them on how to submit the grant.
So I'm not sure who the appropriate person is here. I'm looking at you, Nicole, because you'll probably know who the appropriate person is, but Jamie's comment, this is not the first time she said it, and we only have this meeting every other month. So who can help with this?
Yep, that's me. So I see that comment. I think I missed the last meeting, so I will have someone look into that.
Thank you.
Meeting.
I know we're going to be moving on. I just want to mention, we've tried to get the topic of investigations to this committee since we were LCAS, the License Center Advisory Subcommittee. And I'm just so pleased that Ruben is open to collaborating on this. I'm just really appreciative. I just want to say that. So.
Yeah.
Thanks, Julie.
All right. Erin, you want to take us to the next session of the meeting?
Sure, Julie just provided the perfect segue because that's what we're starting with. So as I'm sure many of you are aware, this is a topic that has been of interest for a while. So in response to your guys' feedback, Ruben and I and other staff from the licensing division and the early learning division discussed next steps for developing resource documents for the investigation process. So both the CPS investigation process, but also like the licensing complaint process. So two separate documents. And the idea is to develop like these FAQ documents, but that are targeted towards childcare providers and center directors, and just providing the most relevant information for you guys. So just as a brief overview of the plan with this is today, we're just asking, putting a general call out to you guys for what kind of questions do you think should be included in these FAQ docs? And then once we have feedback from you guys, somebody from the licensing team is going to take the lead on putting together the draft documents with your feedback incorporated. And then in the February meeting, we'll be bringing the draft documents to you guys so you guys can review them, provide any feedback or edits on them before they get posted online. So today's just the first step in kind of getting your initial feedback, but I just wanted to make sure we clarify that you will have another opportunity to provide feedback once the documents are put together. Janelle?
I just want to say on that, look to the foster side because there are options for foster families under investigation that like kind of a group you can go to ask questions and be supported through that process, which is not available on the childcare side.
That is such a good call out, Janelle. And that is something that we did talk about, kind of modeling the resources and documents that are targeted for foster parents. That's pretty much exactly what we have in mind, having those resources, but directed to the relevant audience. And then Veronica's asking for, oh, go ahead, Ruben.
Sorry, Erin. I think Janelle was asking for, Janelle, I know what you're talking about, obviously, because foster care is also a licensing division. We have the FIRST program, which is a third-party group that supports foster parents through the investigative process. Mm-hmm. And Janelle, it was a requirement that came out of RCW, came out of LEDGE, right? And so we've had it for a lot of years, and yeah, we don't have that resource for childcare.
Thanks, Ruben. And Veronica's asking to elaborate a bit on what the FAQs are in reference to. So the idea behind these FAQs so there will be two separate documents, one related just to the licensing complaint and investigation process, the other one referring to the CPS side of investigations. So the purpose of these documents is to be a helpful resource for childcare providers that are undergoing an investigation process. And so really we're looking to you guys to be the ultimate decision makers on what the most helpful and relevant information is to include on that. But generally speaking, they're going to outline the process, any relevant rules or WACs that providers need to know, helpful resources, things of that nature. And then Katie has a question in the chat. Ruben, this might be for you. It says, what parts of a call-in investigation can providers tangibly receive when first contacted by CPS so we don't feel like we are in the dark?
Yeah, so Katie, it's you know, I talked about this before, but a little bit, but you know, we have these publications and we have these brochures for alleged subjects of abuse and neglect, right? But we don't really have anything for like owners or directors, right? Of like, what information can we have? Because, and so that's what this FAQ is going to be all about. You know, what can I expect when a CPS investigator comes to my door? What, you know, where's the RCW that says that they can receive X, Y, and Z, right? And so it's this document, this FAQ, and we're also kind of thinking maybe like a flow chart, because I think it gets kind of confusing, like when you have a CPS investigation and then you have your licensor come out and they follow up on any licensing violations that they occurred. So kind of a flow chart, but just kind of some RCWs and some WACs that pertain to really the CPS portion so owners and directors have that information.
Yes, and just curious, but when they come on site, you know, the only thing that we are left with when they walk out the door is one, fear, but two, just a business card. Like, understandably, the call is anonymous, but is there something of the actual call so we can start, you know, kind of in doing our own investigation, you know, depending on what it is, you know, for a director, the date or the time, you know, just any information that we can start working on our end. I mean, is there any, or is it all to be kept, you know, anonymous at that moment until the full investigation's done? Because all we have is that card, maybe a callback, and then it is found valid or not valid. Like that is the only communication we get as a provider usually. And that, you know, that's very scary for us. And so,
yep.
You know.
So Katie, that is a great question for the FAQ, right? All that stuff. So
I know.
help us build this document, help us build this FAQ, right? And let's start it, guys. And then it could be a live document too. Like if there's other questions or need clarification, we can go on the website and answer that. And this will be good. This will be this document, I think this FAQ will be good for the directors and owners of childcare. You may not like what you hear. I just want to, you know, you may not, but at least you'll kind of know the why, right, behind it. And Katie, just to not to get in the weeds of your questions, but like, you know, sometimes on these investigations, directors, owners are going to get very limited information on it. First of all, you're never going to know who called it in. You guys heard that. We're never going to just, you know, say who called it in. But sometimes, especially if law enforcement's involved, that's another, you know, that could be another question. Like, what if law enforcement's involved? Well, the CPS is kind of takes the back seat and law enforcement kind of, you know, takes the lead. So we really can't say anything. So there's that's why I think that this document will be super helpful.
I see Lorena has her hand up.
Hi, good morning. I just have a question about the process. I know that there's a lot of things going on during an investigation, and I know that they have to do like a process to finish that, but it takes a long time. Besides that, sometimes, well, most of the times, these accusations are false. So they're just taking time from the providers, from the government funds to process these false accusations. Is there a way for you guys to make it faster so that you don't make waste our time in you guys' time as well? I had so far in 5 years, I think I lost count after the 6th or 7th accusation, but more than that, all of them were false. And there's a lot of people that they just call in making false accusations for no reason. And you can see the pattern that go from provider to provider to provider to provider making false accusations. So if you already have a pattern of the same person calling for various reasons, and most of them are false. Is there a way for you guys to help with this?
So I don't know if you're looking for an answer now, but that's a great question on the FAQ.
Yes, if you have the answer, yes, because I'm not the only one in here with the same question, and we would like to um have that, or I can put my email on the chat, and you guys can email me with a little bit of more information on what can we do to accelerate the process, or is there a way that we can do that? Because there's a lot of things going on right now, and providers calling, oh, my case still open after a month or two, and the only thing that we can say, it takes a little bit, but you guys are just wasting the time for us in you guys' time, and it's not it's not okay.
So let me just do a brief answer, and then we'll also, put that in the FAQ. So we have, I have 36 investigators across the state for license and division CPS, and by law they have 90 days to complete investigation. Now, law enforcement's involved, and they can go beyond 90 days. So it does come up to be kind of a resource. We have 5,200 childcare providers, 4,300 foster parents, 160 group care facilities. So I can just, there is a large body of providers in Washington state that these 36 investigators are responsible to investigate allegation, abuse, and neglect. So they obviously have a caseload. They average about 5 to 8 intakes a month, and some take longer than others. With that said, you're right. Our founded rate is about 4%, right? And so we also need to be mindful that when staff are on alternate assignment for wherever they work, it could be at a group home, could be at an institution, it could be, in a child care center. We need to be mindful that is impacting, how you guys run business, right? So we need to make sure that we are trying to complete them as quickly as we can, and making sure we're also doing a thorough investigation as well.
And I wanted something that wasn't as clear as it was in my head is this first question, we're gathering input specifically about the CPS investigations. We have the next question is going to be asking for questions or comments regarding licensing investigations. That being said, we can sort through if any of it kind of gets mixed up, but on the next Mentee screen, you'll have an opportunity to provide feedback specifically regarding licensing complaints and investigations that are not involved with CPS.
Can I share something with the CPS?
Yes, of course.
Question. Okay. There was a case that there was a family that I was helping, was falsely accused by a teacher, and the case ended on where that your staff from DCYF have said, oh, it must be a miscommunication. The child was in a special education classroom. The teacher was biased. Assumption, she didn't even report it to her principal. She just made a decision to call CPS on this mother who English not first language. So when CPS went to the parents' house and collected all the information, and I got involved in the case, and we did ask questions, and it turned to there was a conflicts between the teacher and the parent. So it was more of bias, discrimination. There was no language support. But your staff, the conclusion that we heard from one of your staff was, oh, we're going to close the case. It was misunderstanding or miscommunication. So, and that I see cases like that often happens, where people just call just because the person's cultural background or so much bias is happening in this world. So, but when the lady, when one of your staff went into the parents' house, the kids were there. The kids were traumatized. The child he was autistic. The mom, single mom, she went through a lot. She has to stop her job for 3 days because she was so confused. I mean, there was so much damages that happened. So I was talking to one of your staff going back and forth. It cannot be, you cannot say, I'm going to close the case misunderstanding. That's unacceptable. This teacher needs to be held accountable. I said, you can't just say she literally, damaged this family's life. The mom was home a couple of days from work. The kids were traumatized. There's a false accusation. I mean, I said, DCYS should have, you guys need to revisit your policy around how you're reporting or how you're conducting your investigation. Because often these investigations, I understand there's a lot of negligence, and I know that there's things that happen, but often when discrimination and things like that are reported, so what's going to happen to the teacher? What's going to happen to the teacher? What's going to happen to the person who reported? Because the mom already knew where this information was coming from. Because we had to sit down with the school, and they admitted, but they were like, oh, they also said it was miscommunication, apologize. So I'm just trying to figure out, and I see cases like this all the time where it damages our community, and misunderstanding, we're going to close the case, that's not an answer. So I'm hoping you guys can, and I always wanted to connect with you guys to see, something needs to happen. It cannot be. And then the person I talked to she said she was going to talk to her supervisor and then the mother said, well, I need a record that it says whatever information. You can't just say, I'm going to close the case and say misunderstanding. I need more than that. Tell me, this has been bias and discrimination. I want a report that it says, this is how you conduct the investigation, and this is where it led to, so that I can keep that on my record. But miscommunication and closing the case, that's not an answer. That's what we wanted from your member of your team, but it didn't happen.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I just, our CPS system in Washington State is not perfect, right? We have 11,000 intakes a month that we take. As you know, anyone can call CPS. I'm talking about on the other side, what we call kind of child welfare CPS. You wouldn't imagine how many CPS intakes that we get where it could be like a custody battle, right? And we get a lot of those. And even on the licensing side, where I'm just trying to think of an example. Maybe you a parent's upset for whatever reason, maybe you ask the child to no longer, come to the facility, or you fired a teacher, and they call CPS. It happens a lot, right? And so when someone calls CPS, and again, this will be part of the FAQ, the allegations have to rise to the level of the law, which is negligent treatment, physical abuse, or sexual abuse. So if those allegations rise to the level of that law, we are required to do an investigation. Now, you're right. As we do an investigation, and thorough investigation, sometimes we find out that this is bogus. These are false. This person's out to kind of smear the provider or smear the parent or whatever. So we do have the opportunity to make a referral to law enforcement for making a false allegations towards someone, which is a misdemeanor charge. Now it would be up to law enforcement and the prosecutors to move forward on that. But that is an avenue that sometimes we take if we feel someone is making a false allegation against anyone using the CPS intake line.
I have a question about that. When you say that when someone is making a false allegation, how do you go about to determine what is a false allegation?
And I'm just going to jump in here. That's a really great question that should be included in the FAQ. We don't have time to dive into all of the questions being submitted, but this is the stuff that we are hoping to gather. What is top of mind for you guys when you're thinking about these CPS investigations? What questions do you have? What information would be the most helpful for you? So I don't want to discourage you sharing those questions. I just kind of want to temper our expectations on how deep we can dive into these right now. Susan, oh, and I'm sorry, did you have anything else to add?
I was just wondering, how do you want us to, you want us to type in those questions or what
We're
works?
capturing them right now, so sharing them verbally, that will be captured in the minutes and included. You can put them in the chat or you can put them in the Menti.
Okay.
Susan? Oh, sorry, Susan.
Hey, thank you. So, I don't know that, I think this could potentially go on the FAQ, but what I'm wondering about when you hear about the low percentage of findings, and we know that false accusations are made, when someone on the intake line should that person also be trained to explain to the person reporting, that, please understand that false accusation, like both sides of the equation, so that they understand, do you really want to pursue this? Especially if it's through their experience lens, it sounds like it could be not potentially unfounded, like so that people understand that it's not okay to make false accusations. How does that get translated or communicated to people? Because I
Exactly.
think the problem here is that what happens is those false accusations result in harm, a lot of resources, financially, emotionally, all those kinds of things. And we have a responsibility, I believe, to do everything we can to mitigate that. And I mean, DCYF has the responsibility, because then we can avoid the situation like this, that was just explained about the family that was severely impacted because someone understood the consequences of their actions could result in something not favorable to themselves. So that's what I would wanted to offer.
And that's good too, or maybe just a follow-up, like he mentioned, there's like the physical harm or the sexual harm or the neglect. Like when they make accusations, do those accusations fall under one of those, like I would say, like categories, instead of, the kid had their shoe off in the classroom, like, because I think at that point there's some serious things that are happening in the world, that are like really happening. And then there are situations where that's kind of just vague. Just a teacher's upset and they're retaliating. I think like trying to determine differentiate between those as well.
So Aaron, I know you want to move on, but I do feel like, I just want to make sure we're clear. For one of my investigators to show up to a licensed childcare, the allegations have to rise to the level of some serious allegations of physical abuse, sexual abuse, or negligent treatment.
Exactly.
It's by law that we don't just show up. It has to be some serious allegations.
And
I
I
would-
agree.
I would like to, this is Jennifer Thompson. I would like to respectfully disagree with you. We had an
Me too.
allegation called in on us that was that a teacher told another teacher to squeeze a child's hand. I am not even joking you. And this was a retaliation thing. And we had CPS and licensing showing up. And yeah, that was not even close. Like there was no eyewitness of anything. The person who called it in did not even state that she saw it. It was literally another teacher told me to squeeze a child's hand. That was why it was called in.
And I'm so sorry to cut this off because I know that you guys are sharing some really substantive feedback, but I also don't want us to miss out on the opportunity of getting your input on the rest of what we have for this portion of the agenda. Julie, did you have something that you wanted to jump in with?
Well, I think it's fair to share, Jen and others, those stories that are relevant, that describe an investigator just showing up or something like that. I definitely think that you should be putting that in the Menti, because I think everybody has examples like that. And then somebody, I was going to go back up. Janelle Waterman had said that there should be provider support when an investigation starts, even access to another provider to discuss, vent, or question. I think that would be really key. I think a lot of us have been reached out to. Someone reached out to me recently for some support. She had a CPS investigator call and say she was going to show up that morning in like a couple of hours regarding an incident that happened outside in a very part-time employee's personal life, and that was dropped because it just wasn't worthy of them investigating that complaint. But they decided to pursue the provider. It doesn't make sense, and I think that having maybe a list of providers on an FAQ that are willing to, give some an ear to the provider and help them. I think it can be very emotional and very stressful, and sometimes just having somebody that's not in that moment could be very helpful on their side. So I do think that that's an important thing to have in the document.
Thanks, Julie. And I want to encourage everybody, any additional stories, feedback, questions on these topics, we welcome it. We'll be sending out, so that you have the Menti now, and then we'll be sending out a link to a survey in the follow-up email to provide an extended opportunity to gather your feedback on this. I just want to make sure we get to the second piece of this since we're out of time, but hopefully Julie doesn't mind me eating up just a couple of her minutes in the upcoming topic. But I wanted to get some of your initial thoughts regarding the 2024 work plan. So similarly to what we were just discussing, this is just an initial ask to help me build the draft work plan for you guys to review in the next meeting. So the first question is taking the temperature on where you guys are with in-person meeting, if that's something you want to consider for 2024, if you would like to have one of your meetings be in person. So if you wouldn't mind taking a moment to participate in the poll.
Well, I think it's important to mention that folks that are part of the committee, DCYF would pay for their travel. I know it's been a while, and so I think it's important to mention that. If you're on the committee, DCYF would pay for your travel. Also, it would be a hybrid, so it would also be available on like a Zoom platform like this, right?
Yes, Julie, thank you. So it has been a while, hasn't it? But yes, for provider supports members, lodging, travel, accommodation, all of that is covered. And then moving forward, even with in-person meetings, we will be offering a hybrid option. So you're never going to be in a situation where you have to attend in person in order to participate in the meeting.
And who would they email if they wanted to apply to be part of the committee or to just get on the mailing list for when applications are being considered again?
Or to join provider supports. So recruitment usually happens we start that towards the end of Q1 usually. So we're usually seating the new members in early summer. So we should be sending out communication about that.
Some folks may be here today because they saw, like their friend told them about it, or they saw a Facebook post. They may not be on the mailing list. So who would they email to get on the mailing list?
Great question. I'll put our general inbox in the chat right now. So you can reach out to the community engagement general inbox, or you can reach out to me directly, anybody on the CE team. I'll put my email in there as well. All right. So, wow, you guys are much more united than ELAC was. ELAC is still coming in closer to 50-50 on the in-person question, but it looks like 50% there's more interest on this side of things.
Well, and we're talking about one meeting, right? We're not talking about
Right.
moving to in-person meetings in general.
Right, right. And I also want to reiterate that like this poll right here is not going to be, you know, that's not the final decision, but it helps me when I'm putting together the draft work plan for 2024 that you guys will be reviewing in the February meeting. I want when we're discussing that, if it's something that the committee's still interested in moving forward with, then I'll be asking for your guys' input on which meeting we want to do that and where it may be. So we can talk more about that as we move through the draft work plan process.
Well, and I think it's important to send out some kind of a survey to committee members, because we could have a representation here of people being in favor that are not on the committee. So then we wouldn't necessarily have anyone that showed up. So we need to know what the committee members' vote would be, because many of them are not here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we can also include a survey for this in the follow-up email. And that's another way we can track who's weighed in. And also this, like I said, we'll be having a deeper dive conversation about the work plan in February. So that's also a great time to provide feedback on that. Okay, and for the last ask I have for you guys, we don't need to spend a ton of time on this right now, because this is also something that we can include a survey in for the follow-up email. And we always welcome feedback on this, but I just wanted to get your initial thoughts on priority topics that you would like to make sure are included in the 2024 work plan. We'll be adding more to it as we go, but I just wanted to get any input you may have on what topics you want to make sure I prioritize when we're mapping out what we'll be discussing in 2024. Susan?
Yeah, my question is, when you say topics, do you mean topics that we would be informed about, or topics that we get to take action about?
So both. Both. Once I have your input and I start drafting the 2024 work plan, part of that process is also connecting internally with licensing and early learning. And so they can also flag topics that they will be seeking input on, or that there may be a feedback opportunity on. So I'll be gathering similar info internally to help map out those meaningful feedback opportunities, Susan.
Thank you.
So I'll just give you all a few minutes with this, and then Julie, when you're ready to move on with your conversation, then feel free to do so. Just give people a couple minutes here.
We can leave that link up, right, while we're chatting? Okay. Okay, so I just wanted to share with folks that several months ago, I think it was in August, we had a meeting, and Debbie Groff, who's here, she mentioned that she was open to having these community cafes. Debbie, I'm sorry, what is your title so folks know?
Well, Julie, I have to always look at my sticky note because it's a pretty long title. I am the Child Care Deputy Senior Administrator.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So she said she was open to doing these community cafes to have licensing and providers come together and ask questions, ask if there's updates, voice concerns, just have a conversation and get to know each other. So as soon as she said that, I jumped on it, and I found a venue that was willing to host this for free. And I got in touch with Debbie, she got in touch with the licensing group in my region, Region 5. And we had, I mean, by the time the event happened, I think there had to have been as many DCYF folks in the room as there were providers. So there was representation from Region 5. And then, of course, Debbie drove over from somewhere on the other side of the mountains. And there might have been a couple other folks that did the same. And I was very appreciative. So we were able to, and we also had Diana Stokes, who is the one that's just very, very, very informed when it comes to the professional development requirements and all the different pathways that are available to providers to meet the requirements. So Diana did a presentation on the professional development requirements. She took questions. We moved into providers having questions for licensors. And it was just a really nice event we didn't meet everyone, not every licensor from my region showed up, but there were a few. So that was good. And so the fact that Debbie's, open to driving to your part of the woods and having these events, I think you guys should take advantage of that. Somebody asked me, are we going to start doing this like every month? And I'm like, no, Debbie's not going to drive over every month. So anyway, but she's open to going to lots of different places. I don't know if I feel like you've done these maybe in other places, and I'm kind of wondering how it's worked with other places and how the venue was found. Are you guys doing that or providers doing that? How's that working?
Julie, you're directing that to me?
Yeah.
Okay. So because we, have experimented a little bit with these community cafes, we're actually looking at a opportunity for all providers, working with Nicole's shop. Erin's even helping us to try to organize this more at a regional level so that we can, one, do what you already asked us to do, is kind of get some dates on a calendar so people kind of know, and then really partner with providers to try to find what's the best venue, where does this work. We know weekends are a priority because you guys don't have kids on the weekends typically. So we're trying to do this, Julie, in a little more systematic way so that we can, one, wrap around these services. So it's not just childcare licensing that shows up, but we have folks, again, from Nicole's shop that can talk about early learning and professional development and all the things that folks have questions about to better meet the needs. So we're just in these initial stages of conversation of trying to figure this out for the next calendar year. So we will be looping back around, but I wanted you to know that we've had such a great response as far as, we didn't have everybody show up, right, when we were in Bremerton, but it was still good. The conversation was healthy. It was really respectful. We got lots of answers out there for providers. And I think what I enjoyed the most is we just got to meet each other and just spend some time in a room to really grapple with what are the hot topics, what are the concerns, but also, bring in our lovely Diana, who is the wizard of professional development, and she shared that knowledge with folks as well. So we are looking at a better way to deliver this out, Julie, in this next year. So stay tuned for that. But also, I am still not, it's not that I'm saying don't contact me if you want your smaller community to have access and provide an opportunity for a gathering. So we're still open to that. We're just trying to streamlining a little more so that we can make sure that we've got the resources to get our folks in the same place at the same time. So a little bit more to come on that as we develop this regional plan moving forward.
I just want to add that I was there at the one in Region 5 as well, and I got to meet Debbie in real life, which was so fun. But also, it was great to meet licensors and licensing staff higher ups, and it was low key, and everybody was laughing, and we got to ask questions and rub shoulders, and it was really enjoyable. And I know Julie and I really enjoyed it, and it was absolutely exactly what we wanted from it. And so I think every region should do it like Julie and I have talked about, and like what the whole purpose of it was for. So it was perfect. So thank you guys for making time and being able to come over to the peninsula to Region 5. Because I thank you personally, because it meant a lot. It really did. From one provider, it meant a lot.
Yeah, so I'm wondering how, going forward with these, what the plan is for getting word out to providers, because in this scenario, I didn't really know, what was going to happen. And so I ended up reaching out to Gary Burris, who's part of the Child Care Action Council in our area. And he was able to then send it over to the person in our area that emails everybody about training and whatnot. My concern, I was super grateful that Gary did that for us, but I also had a concern that when I get an email from, I can't think of her name, that sends out the training stuff, sometimes I just delete them if I know that everybody's up to date on their training and whatnot. And so it would be nice if it came in from a provider's direct licensor, because nobody just deletes those. They're like, oh, I better go see what that is. So yeah, it'd be great if it came out from licensors.
Yeah, and Julie, that's part of our conversation moving forward and working with the early learning coalitions, our childcare aware folks. What is the best way to communicate this out? And you guys were our guinea pigs, right? So we had to try to figure out how in the world do we do that in a real quick turnaround time frame. And we learned a lot through that. Being DCYF, we have to work through our comms folks when we're sending out a mass email to folks, even if it's just in a region, which is perfectly fine, but knowing that we need to set up some of that early on. And that's why I think this planning of moving forward and looking at these at the regional level, we will build those communication strategies right into the plan so that folks will get the message from the person they probably want to receive it from. Makes the most sense.
Right. So right now, should a provider contact you if they want to do a community cafe, or are you guys working on finding days and locations, and is it coming from you guys, or should providers be reaching out?
I would appreciate the reach out, just because then we would know maybe the priority of which regions are wanting it right now. But we are going to try to pick some dates, figure out who needs to be at the table, communicate this out. And we won't start that process till after the first of the year. But it is on our radar, and it is something we're all really dedicated to do. But if folks are really interested in something sooner than that, reach out, and then I can grapple with, is this feasible? Can we do this right now? Or is it just really good information to share with this crew that's trying to figure out how to best deliver this opportunity?
Yeah, Julie, I just, we kind of want to make this more at the regional level. So Katie, thanks for saying saying some words. I mean, I love this. I mean, remember Nicole and I a few months ago, this is our commitment to strengthen our relationship with and partners with our providers. And this is the way to do it, Katie. And I mean, Travis and I went up, I love just going up there and just having lunch with providers and hearing them and just make it, low key and informal, and having conversations and how we can improve our relationship and partner with the early learning providers. So this is the way we do it. So Debbie supervises the 5 area administrators across the state, so she's more the statewide one. So that's why, Julie, we're trying to push this more at the region. So get to know your area administrator, get to know your supervisors, get to know the licensors that work in that region or in that county, right? And really strengthen that relationship and have those conversations. Now, there's going to be conversations that's going to impact the entire state that we'll want to bring, to the table too, and to Debbie and Travis's attention. But let's get down to the local regions, right? And have more of these meetings. I think it's been very impactful for me. I know that we're just going to lunch and talking with and going to the providers and having conversations. So we are committed for 2024 to do that for sure.
I would just add this. We have some meetings already in the work, right? So some communities have, like Spokane, more to come on it.
And Travis, you froze after the word Spokane.
We have some meetings around the state that we're already working on. Oh my gosh, Mike.
That's great.
So more to come.
Is there other locations planned besides Spokane right now?
Yes, we're working on the Spokane right now.
Okay.
Sorry, my internet is horrible in the office. I gotta go home to get better internet.
Okay. So you guys, you heard Debbie. If you're interested, Debbie, can you drop your email in the chat so folks can email you directly?
Yep, sure can.
I do see some interest in the chat, but that's the way to get things rolling, is to email Debbie. And personally, I think we did 2 hours, and I think we could have gone for 3 because we did an hour of professional development, and having additional time beyond that extra hour for questions from providers, I think would be really helpful.
Excuse me, just one quick question. With the emails in the chat, is there a way that we can get like specifically their title? Because when I go back, I have to think, okay, wait, who is who? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm
I'll
guessing
drop
Debbie's
that in
typing it.
too. And then what I'll do, folks, is I'll receive your emails, and I'm perfectly happy to do that. But I'm going to loop in your area administrator, just so you know. I want you to know that this is a real focus, is to get you back to the folks who are in your community. But I will kind of be your filter at this time until you really know who those folks are. And I do think we need to do a better job of getting that information out, as well as who are your regional folks and who are your area administrators and your supervisors. So we are working on that at the website level, but maybe we need to get a real quick and an easy one pager so that everybody knows who those folks are. But more than happy to receive emails and just kind of direct traffic for a little while.
Cool deal. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Looks like we have some hands up.
Oh, we do.
Hi, I just wanted go back, if you don't mind, just the I think Mr. Marshall was talking about earlier about adding, or I'm referencing on the FAQs earlier about the CPS, and I just want to add a couple of things, if you don't mind. I would like to add of training. I don't know how often investigators get trainings. One thing is you get an anonymous call, but the person who investigates, I have seen often where they sometimes add their perspective, their bias. So I just want to know how often those investigators get training, whether cultural competency training, bias training, and if so, if that person also makes mistakes, who's reviewing their files to make sure that someone else is also double checking that this information is accurate. Yeah, and I just want that. And then also, I want to see where often I heard there was a mother I was helping a couple of months ago. One of her parent, she dropped the child. 2-3 hours later, she said, "My child has bruises." Where when the mother was given to her, there was nothing on it. So she did communicate with her license provider, her license, I don't know, license manager, or whoever that oversees. But I just want to know, I mean, this is the internal work as well. So how is a license, I don't know what their names are, but license provider, that, you know, the folks that comes out that oversees the childcare providers or the centers, how often are those staffs are also getting training or communicating with your investigators? Like, do they actually, you know, work together? Because if the person is reporting to their license and says, "Hey, this is what happened," and they have that information, how can the investigator get that information? Like, you know, I hope I'm making a sense. I'm just trying to figure out how are our people working internally, right? To making sure, like, whoever's, you know, that providers are actually reporting this. So, because I've seen where it says, and I hear this from the community often, where it says, you know, I did report it just to my licensed provider. I've sent it, and families, the provider English was not first language, but it was misinterpreted. So do you have a system where folks can report, provider can report as well? And I know, again, licensed providers also have a lot of work to do. So who's actually monitoring when providers also report stuff like that? So I think adding more into not only the anonymous calls and, you know, folks reporting, but also people that are being accused or are being reported on, adding more and on their perspective as well in the FAC, whatever you call it, FA, yeah, FAQ. So adding having more and training and making sure that, and then I also added, I think you also mentioned about what information do you want to share. And again, I just wanted straightforward. I've seen years ago a data that was shared, a majority calls, majority the data shows the community of color being called on CPS. So we would like to share more update data to see where you guys at. And if you see that the data actually is showing the community of color, and then when you look through the community of color, mostly is Black or, you know, Latino, or whatever the case may be, I mean, what DCYF is doing internally, how are you making sure, you know, these folks are not being discriminated and being, you know, so those are the things that I would like to see to add it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll make sure that's noted for the FAQs. And then in interest of time, if anybody else has any feedback to provide regarding the investigation FAQs, please do so in the Menti, or you'll also have an opportunity to provide that in the survey that will be going out in the follow-up of the meeting. So we don't want to miss any of this input, but in the interest of time, we want to stay on topic as we move forward. So if anybody has questions or feedback to share on what Julie was sharing, feel free to unmute. But Julie, I'll let you dive back in. Oh, it looks like we have a hand up, Veronica, sorry.
Yeah, and I do see that there's a couple of folks that have put their email address in the chat, and you need to put in there that you're putting your email to be added to this to the email list for community engagement, or if you're wanting contact with Debbie, you need to reach out to her directly. She put her email address in the chat. Anyway, so Veronica, did you have comments, questions?
Yeah, it's kind of similar in what they were just sharing, but I wanted to add that what is it? Are the licensors getting trainings? And if they are, well, not if they are, but I hope that they are, because I see a lot of intimidation towards educators when they come out. There's scare tactics. There's one thing, I mean, I think pop-up visits are good. However, we're working together. I think that it's important, at least for them to be aware that if they come into an environment where it's it becomes chaotic or whatever, that I hope that it's okay that we can say for them to just step out and come back another day, because there is a lot of that. Like I have a family that's been expelled or it's not a right fit from like 8 sites. So I know there's others that are in a similar situation. So I think for me, I would like to make sure that it's okay if that they come in, it's okay for me to say like come another day. But anyhow, one of my experiences is that there are intimidation tactics. There's educators, I mean not educators, there's licensure in specific that's like I have 13 years working in this. I start everybody with 6 kids regardless if they have a doctorate degree. I think there's some of that hopefully in the WAC at one point may shift, because although I don't think it's fair if someone has experience in education, we are all being treated the same because of one licensor in specific, because I know it's not like that straight across, but that licensor seems to like intimidate a region to that and not share also opportunities to have like long hours or overnight care. I would like to in the future see something where we can discuss something around that, where these educators are taken serious for the work that we do and not being told, well, I know you would love to have 12 because of the money, but I start everyone with 6. And other intimidation tactics that some of them may use. I think that it's important that they get training on biases so that what the prior educator was sharing, things like that don't happen. And it's not just check, the box and move forward. What else was, I've had things written down. But most, a lot of what you just shared is that I just feel some licensors should have not be so judgmental when visiting. And also, if we're supposed to work with licensors, why is there a kind of like a scary climate with them? I don't think that that's something that's just there. I think it's something that has been created. I know educators that are panicking when they see a licensor, and imagine the kids that are in there don't know who these people are and are going through so much change and things at home. So I think that we need also to hold these licensors credible or more, hold them accountable to do their job.
I want to make sure that somebody with community engagement is capturing the comments. I just want to confirm.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
we're capturing these comments, but I still would like to encourage everybody to
to
please share their feedback in writing if possible. That is the best way for us to track it.
Yeah, I do want to mention a couple of things, and I don't know if Travis is able to come back, but it's been a few years. Travis had mentioned at one point that they used to do surveys after a monitoring visit. I think every provider I've ever talked to has said, I've never seen a survey, but it's a nice idea. And I think if it exists or if it needs to be created, the idea that after a monitoring visit, an automatic survey goes to the provider, they fill it out, and then somebody evaluates the feedback about those licensors so that they can see if there's a pattern or a problem in an area. I would love to hear if that is something that's on the radar, and I want to let Travis address my question, and then if we could go to Ruben, that'd be great.
I think also, before I end, I think it's important that when we're getting licensed, to also have a survey like that. Like I whipped through my license like in a matter of weeks or something, but maybe 2 months out of the 3 months, the licensure was out due to family things, and that's understandable. But I had an extremely difficult time finding out what I needed to have 24-hour care or overnight because they wanted me to have a mattress. There's a lot of licensors out there that want you to have a twin size mattress, and there are a lot of families. I believe it was Richland that years ago, some children passed away because they were left alone. Those things are happening, and I feel it's really important for these licensors to stop having so much. His words were, "It's because I'm passionate." Well, it's as if I'm taking my child to you. Well, my environment might not be suitable to him, but it's suitable to a lot of other families. And I'm not specifically saying that part happened to me, but I have families that come in and they're like, this is what my child needs, a home environment, not a daycare center home. There's a lot that goes on between those things. But anyhow, I just think that it's important for licensors for us to have a survey too. Because I went through a lot.
I think everybody would agree with that. I know Katie has struggled with some of the pre-licensing stuff. And Veronica, do you have access to the survey, the Mente? Because we really do need to move on, but your comments do need to be documented. We need these comments. So I'm going to jump over to Travis.
Yeah, Julie, to answer your question, yes, it is still in the works to develop that feature in WA Compass so that we can send it out to folks, we see the value in that. So yes, we're still working on making that happen. The other thing I would add is until we do have that survey, if there is issues that come up with licensors, they have a supervisor, and providers should be contacting that supervisor if there's issue to navigate through that, right? And it's the only way that we're going to get the feedback to be able to get our staff up to speed on what's going on. So there is an intervention.
Okay, Travis is stuck, so I'm gonna follow
In there. I know that it seems like, you know, you're kind of tattling on the license or whatever.
Well, the one I was talking about briefly, he felt attacked when I said the word waiver and variance. He's like, well, if you want to just go to get yourself an attorney. And I was like, whoa. So yeah, I mean, I can discuss this further at a later time. But yeah, they did not want to give us the name of the supervisor.
Thank you. Sorry, we have to finish up. Ruben, do you have a couple of comments? Because we are over time at this point. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just lot of questions regarding what training licensors investigators have. So all my staff in LD are required to do implicit bias training. So that's a requirement that they do. But as you guys know, just because they do a training doesn't mean that they're not going to be biased, right? So I just want to echo what Travis was saying. When I hear things about intimidation and any type of disrespect or unprofessional, please contact the supervisor and talk to that supervisor. And Veronica, if your licensor is refusing to give you the supervisor's name, I please contact Travis directly. And all our licensors should let you know who their supervisor is, so we can address the problems. Thanks, sure.
Travis, can you drop your email in the chat? And then we are ready to move on. Katie, go ahead.
Yeah. But thank you, Veronica. I just want to make sure, I'm assuming you are a home provider, and thank you for speaking up, because that is you are a huge part of provider supports and who we want to be, make sure that we're voicing your guys' concerns and your, what you guys are going through as well, because the majority of us on here are center-based, and you guys are just as important. So thank you so much for speaking out and letting us know what's going on in your home. So, okay, so now we are on to early learning language access. We've heard a little bit about this in our previous meetings, but today we have 3 presenters that are going to come in and let us know the achievements of 2023, kind of go over what they're planning on and strategizing for 2024, which is right around the corner. Give us some examples of what they're implementing. So I will turn it over to Cass Wilkerson, Michelle Larimer, and Debbie Groff. Welcome, you guys, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Katie. Hello, everyone. As mentioned, we'll be giving some updates regarding language access and the early learning division. My name is Cass Wilkerson, and the work that I will be sharing is the collaborative efforts of Abdullahi and I as the language access coordinators for the early learning division. I'll give a brief overview of where we've been in 2023 and where we're going in 2024. So in 2023, we worked on streamlining the supports that Abdullahi and I can offer to our division. We developed a process for internal staff to really lean on us. And because of this process, we were able to track some data. So as of today, we've completed 176 project requests, and these requests span from anything like translation, interpretation, quality assurance, and provider engagement. You can see the chart to the right here, showing that out of 176 projects completed, 112 were for the Somali language and 64 were for Spanish. And this shows that internally we have more Spanish speakers who are able to complete projects themselves versus in the Somali language. We supported direct community engagement efforts like webinars, UX design processes, and community work groups spanning from topics like grants, designations, and provider staff qualifications and trainings. We continued collaboration with partners and the division. And what came of that is we have built Somali and Spanish glossaries with our partners, really focusing on language alignment. And we've also established a division committee focusing on language access efforts throughout our division. And then we can go to the next slide, please. And through the collaborative work that we have done in 2023, we have established some immediate priorities for 2024. And they include initiating centralized data collection to really better understand our community needs, implementing resource identification to enhance team efficiency and collaboration, and fostering even deeper collaboration among our diverse language staff. And we really look forward to continuing this work. And I just shared a quick overview, and I want to pause for any questions before I pass the floor to Michelle. Hold on, I see your hand up.
Yes, I've noticed you have 2 languages. Is this a tested pilot? Because there's more languages and that need support. So I was just wondering, how do you come up with only 2 languages? Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that question. So the roles that Abdullahi and I have, we are language specific. So I am the Spanish language access coordinator and Abdullahi is the Somali language access coordinator. And we do recognize that there is a need for more languages, and our agency, DCYF as a whole, is also building out a language access team that will also support the access to other languages. So thank you for that question, Hadan. All right, for the sake of time, if there's any other questions or wonderings, go ahead and put them in the chat for us, and I'll pass the floor to Michelle.
Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be here with all of you. My name is Michelle Larimer. I'm the Child Care East Subsidy Administrator. I oversee 8 teams of PBS staff across Eastern Washington. Also here with me is Trisay Taylor. She's here if there's anything that she would like to add to the conversation while we're in discussion. So I'd like to share with you that we do provide translated letters and DCYF forms in a variety of different languages to work with our community and to ensure that we have good communication. We have approximately 141 different languages that we have in forms and translated currently. We have interpreter services for ensuring that we can get the language needed to communicate with families and providers in the moment of when we're in conversation with them, either that be when they're calling into us or when we are calling out to have conversation. We have, I believe it's 3 different agencies that we work with, so to ensure that we can always get an interpreter that is needed at the time. We also have certified staff to help with the services when on the phone. So we do have quite a few of our Spanish list certified interpreter employees that will help in the moment when we're able to get them connected with somebody of their own language. So that is very helpful. We do have a high demand of Spanish speakers. I also wanted to, I think we got the 141 in there. Yeah. So that is where we are reaching out and having contact and communication and ensuring that we're able to work with the families and providers as well as we can in the call center environment. And that is what I wanted to share. I also want to let you know that we continue to add staff with the certified Spanish speaking as we get the staff available to do that so that we can help with that high demand of calls. I also wanted to check in and see if you have any questions or anything before I pass this on to Debbie.
Well, hello again. I'm Debbie Groff. This time, see my title's right there on the slide, so I get to just read it, which is a lot easier. Childcare Deputy Senior Administrator in the Licensing Division. So glad to be here to talk to you all about language access and some updates that we have. We have done a real good reflection on our hiring practice in childcare licensing and really looking at intentional hiring of multi-language or dual language staff. One of the things that we have been hearing about and trying to work on for a couple years now is filling more licensing positions dual language with the Somali language as a focus. So we are going to post a position in King County, and we are going to keep it there until we fill this position. We've talked to some of our provider groups that really support our Somali providers, and what we're hearing from them is that we need to even think about our postings in general, and what do those look like, and what languages are we putting them out in, and what the qualifications are to become a child care licensor. Maybe that when somebody does have that dual language skill. So we're really focusing on what we're hearing from the provider world, how to do a better job of outreach, and to truly focus on that intentional hiring to make sure that we are getting people into childcare licensing positions who can better serve the population in Washington state of our providers. I did a little bit of a survey to try to figure out who do we have in our licensing staff right now that speak and are certified to speak more than one language. And we have 16 dual language childcare licensors who speak Spanish as well as English. We have 2 dual language licensors who speak Somali and English. We have 2 dual language licensing supervisors who speak Spanish, and we have 4 dual language support staff who also speak Spanish. So we have 24 staff right now. We know that number needs to grow. We know that number needs to include more languages than Spanish and Somali, and we're doing a really wholehearted effort to try to find folks who can help us with this. We have a couple staff right now who are looking at the certification to be able to work with providers who speak Russian and Ukraine and even Mandarin Chinese. So folks are working on things. It's really, really on the top of our list as far as how to meet the needs of providers. And we do think because of the relationship-based approach that I think we're all focusing on, that language skill and having a dual or multi-language person to talk with folks is paramount. We also had some new contracts for interpretive services, and we are certainly putting that on the forefront with our licensors so they know who to contact, how to contact, and to use those services whenever there is even a question as to whether that language support is necessary. What I would love providers to walk away from is that they also can ask for an interpretive service. If we show up and they're feeling like they really need somebody to help support that language need, they need to ask us and we will help provide that service. It may be on the phone because it's a real quick ask, but we will do our best to support the provider's ask as well as our licensing staff as well. We do send out a translation document in multiple languages whenever we send out a legal letter, because folks need to know that they can request that letter to be translated into their primary language. So that document flows out with every single legal letter, and we are looking at other touch points where that document might make sense. Because again, getting something out to providers in their primary language or their most used language is paramount to understanding how to stay in compliance with the rules and how to build those healthy and safe environments for kiddos. And I think I addressed the last bullet already, so we can move to the next slide. So now you're probably wondering, how do we know? How do we know who providers are, and how do we know what languages they might speak, and how do we record that? And so a lot of it is done through the portal, and we house that information in our WA Compass data system, but we can only capture as much as the providers tell us. So when applying for a child care license, it asks what languages do you speak. What is your primary language? What are your spoken languages? And then what are the languages that you're going to instruct the children with? These are really important to share with us because we can better meet your needs if we know the language of delivery that we need to come with. So I ask all of you to kind of reach out to your colleagues, reach out to your friends, and just to know that that language documentation in the portal is paramount for us to know, one, who do we need to hire and what languages do our licensors need to speak? And two, until we get all that figured out and housed, how do we support you with interpretive services? So please let us know anytime you have a language need. We need to know that. If it's at your front door, we need to know what your needs are so that we can better communicate with you, so that, because of the primary goal of all of this is clear communication. We want to know that what we're saying is understood and what you're saying to us is understood as well. I think we can move on to the next slide. There is a feedback opportunity, and I think they just dropped it in the chat. It is a survey about how we can meet your language needs. We need to hear from you. We need to know exactly what we need to do as an agency to better support your language needs. So please look at the survey. I look at the survey, and one of the things I want to go back to our language support folks who've already spoke today, Cass, is maybe what we need to do is think about this survey in different languages as well. I believe the survey is in English only, but I think to get a better response, maybe we need to figure out how to get this at least into the 2 other languages that we've talked about today, and get that survey out into the provider world. So we'll circle back on that need, but right now you can certainly go into the chat and look at that survey. And then we'll do a little bit of work about how to get that survey out in at least Spanish and Somali. And any questions about what I shared? Or any of us, since I've got the last slide, if there's anything that you want to ask any of us.
I put question in the chat. This is Hodan. And I was just curious of the language access support is only for providers, or can family get the same support as well?
Hadan, that's a great question. Much of our website is delivered in the 3 languages, and parents have access to that. But I guess I would wonder what the parent was needing. You know, are they wanting to talk to a licensor in a specific language? Are they just asking questions in general? So I think we need a little bit more information, Hodan, as to how to meet those family and parent needs. But we do have a lot of information, as Michelle shared, in Subcommittee and through the authorization process with multiple languages there. But I think, again, knowing what parents need would better help us meet those needs.
No, I was just wondering, you know, of course, the support, I understand that the provider needs, but there's also a huge population that providers are also supporting, and they're coming from different cultural background. And I just wanted to see if they also have the opportunity to, I mean, anything that they can ask DCYF or anything that, you know, that they have access to language support. And I was just wondering also, again, I'm not making this harder for anybody. I'm just curious. And then also how do family know if they need language support that they can request it? Is that written in a handbook policy? Is it written in your website? Is there somewhere if they want to give you any feedback? I mean, how did because again, our audience, our families, our parents. So I was just wondering on that. Thank you.
Yeah, and Hodan, I don't have all the answers to that question. I know there is some information on our website for families, again, that is in multiple languages. But what I'm also hearing is that providers also need that support when they're working with the families and the children for language access. And I think that means we need to be paying a little bit more attention, even in the professional development and training world, as to how to not only connect to resources, but how to deliver curriculum and the care that you're doing, sometimes to families that may not speak your primary language. So I'm putting that on my radar. I think it's a great question about families. Go in and look at that survey, because maybe that's an opportunity to share information on what families need, not just providers.
I just want to say, like, kudos to DCYF for being very deliberate in who they're hiring. And I heard you say King County. I think that's great.
Yep. So spread the word too, folks. So when these postings are there, let folks know that we're really, really being intentional about this. And if you know people who are interested in working in the realm of childcare licensing, let them know to take a look at it, ask questions if they need to, reach out to licensing staff or supervisors or Travis or myself if they're interested in a career path where they can really utilize their language skills.
Any hands up? So I didn't realize that you guys had so many languages already out there and everything that was provided. I think that is wonderful. And I just don't think everybody knows about that and that is available. So again, just getting that word out and being able to tell people where to go and how to access that is big news. I think that's great for DCYF. Thank you. All right. So we'll have a little break, it looks like. Let's see, 5 minutes, get up, get a drink of water, whatnot. Go check ratios if you're working. And we'll be back in 5 minutes.
Okay. Well, I think we're ready to move on to the next section. And I see our presenters are here. Thank you. So today we've got, we're going to be talking about the background checks, hearing some updates. We've got Matt Judge, who is DCYF's Federal Initiative and Collaborative Administrator. And then Meryl Stride, I'm told, is our Provider Support Administrator. So if there's a different title or maybe an explanation to what Provider Support Administrator means, that would be terrific. Welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for the introduction, Julie. Meryl, did we get it right?
Yes, it's the Provider Supports Administrator, and I know that doesn't really tell anybody exactly who I am. I'm a lot of things. Previously, Chris Parvin was in this role, so that probably gives you a better idea of what I do. I have multiple programs that I oversee. Background checks is the big one, including suitability assessments, also the Certificate of Parental Improvement Program, Relative Search, Native American Inquiry Referral, and Indian Child Welfare Legal Notice. So a lot of different programs, but background checks, it takes up a lot of my time and energy, and I'm very passionate about it. I started out as a background check specialist. So I've seen the changes. I've been a part of the changes. I've had to suffer the consequences of the changes. And now I'm in a position to where hopefully I can eliminate or at least alleviate the impact of the changes. So thank you for having me.
And we have a slideshow here, but I understand we're billed as a Q&A session. So we'll try to move through that as quickly as possible so that we have plenty of opportunity to do that back and forth. But we did want to give sort of the context of where, what led up to the current state and the changes that are going into effect starting in January. And here you can see our roadmap, starting with the history of the Child Care and Development Fund requirements around background checks and the long history of back and forth with the federal oversight around our implementation of new staff background checks, and get into the turnaround times where I think we've seen some improvement, background check fees, which have certainly improved, some of the work that has happened with DSHS and partners around background check processes, and just spell out the changes effective January 1st, and improvements that we're hoping to see or that are possible to see in the near future. And then a little contact information, and then hopefully a good chunk will be devoted to the Q&A. So I'll handle some of the CCDF stuff. I think you've probably all seen this this visual before. Basically, on the right-hand side, you can see that there are two sides to the background check requirements that Child Care and Development Fund places on all states that receive that grant. So there are the in-state requirements. Critical among those are the state criminal registry check, the federal criminal check. Both of those are fingerprint required checks. And then we have in-state sex offender registry checks, and abuse and neglect registry checks. So that's all the stuff that we check when a person is coming in and they haven't lived in another state in the last 5 years. Then on the right-hand side, you can see that we do a state criminal history check, sex offender registry check, and abuse and neglect registry checks in other states where a provider has lived, if they've lived in another state in the last 5 years. So under the law that I cite over there on the left-hand side, this is required prior to starting employment for all staff, and at least every 5 years we have to update the background check. And the next bullet there was what I just described around sort of the different elements that are required. And then all the states are required to meet a 45-day or less turnaround time on background checks. That clock starts running once a completed application is received. So like in Washington State, really to have a completed application, we have to have fingerprints. So, as Meryl will get into later, once we have those fingerprints, our turnaround time is well under the 45 days. So the big thing here, we've always met the requirements, or we've met for quite a long time, all the element and what we're finally coming into compliance with here is new staff who come in. I see that my internet connection is unstable. Please let me know if you're seeing the robot effect.
I have had no interruption. Go ahead.
Great. So I see a question in the chat from Susan Brown. Which of those checks are not required for public school teachers? Meryl might be more equipped to answer that question. Julie, I'll take your direction about whether we should answer as we go or think about doing that at the end during Q&A. What do you think?
Yeah, I think saving questions for the end would be great.
Okay, so we'll just have to be on it, me and Meryl, to remember what's been in chat so far. We'll try to do that.
Katie and I can monitor the chat for you, don't worry.
Great, thanks. Next slide, please. So this is just a little history of where we've been with this requirement. Actually, this all went into effect back in October of 2018. And what I really want to be on record about is DCYF having made a pest of ourselves in terms of asking for relief from the feds from this requirement, pushing back on it where we felt that their federal rules really didn't align with the federal law that changed back in 2015. And really just taking every opportunity we could to keep the current state where new staff can come in as long as they're working supervised while we're awaiting the background check, clearance, we're good to go. So we've done everything we could starting back in 2018. We applied for a waiver and got that. We submitted a formal letter taking issue with the requirements and making legal arguments against them. We applied for another round of waivers back in 2020 and through the pandemic. Once we saw on the horizon that Administration for Children and Families, Office of Child Care was going to end the waiver opportunities, We submitted a letter asking for them to extend that opportunity and reiterating our legal arguments. And then when Office of Child Care formally replied, the answer was a hard no. We just continued with our existing policy and let them know explicitly that that was what we were going to continue with for at least as long as the governor's emergency proclamation lasted. And then once that proclamation ended, we continued to keep the existing policy. So I guess just I'm transparently laying out that we've been trying to provide relief, but I think we're really kind of getting to the end of the road on this, to the point where Child Care and Development Fund, Office of Child Care, they're going to start issuing notices of monetary penalties to states that aren't complying with this at this point. I'd also note that next in February, the feds will be out in person doing a monitoring visit, and we'll be monitoring to the background check requirements. So every indication is that if we don't get compliant, they will issue a finding at that time. Next slide, please. So in case you're wondering, we're only allowed to request a waiver when the feds say that we're allowed to. So anything we ask for at this point falls on deaf ears unless they open it up to all the other states as well. Waivers can only be applied for and approved as allowed by Office of Child Care. As of October 2021, they're allowing no new waivers. We're currently compliant with every other requirement except this one. So that's our current status. And here maybe I will turn it over to Meryl, because here at DCYF we've been doing work since since this issue was raised, to try to improve processes and work with our partners, and this slide kind of gets into some of that.
Thank you, Matt. And I just wanted to say all of your questions on the chat, I'm trying not to hold myself back from answering them because I really want to, but the slides may answer some of them. And then of course we'll revisit at the end of the presentation to go over anything that we didn't cover or clarification that's needed. So yeah, basically there's work groups all the time that are forming and working together to try to improve the processes and get creative and working with what we have, the restrictions and the making sure that we're in compliance, but also customer service, meeting that need and knowing the need and awareness, and just really trying to do what we can to make the processes as efficient as possible. That's within our control. Was the ESSB 5693 supplemental operating budget that established the background check work group to review, all of the existing statewide requirements and the processes, and to have that feasibility study and implement a plan for, having a state office that centrally manages the background check processes. And with a central office, we could do sharing of background check results across the state. For the multiple purpose that the state does background checks for, not having people to continue to do background checks for every purpose. And that doesn't mean necessarily sharing a decision. For example, if DSHS makes a decision to not pass an individual for unsupervised access to a vulnerable adult, that doesn't mean that we would take their decision. It just means that we could utilize their background check result and make our own decision based on our own requirements and processes. So we're hoping that that would eliminate, duplication of fingerprint checks and just really, make the process more efficient where we can. The Office of Financial Management, OFM, they chaired the work group, and there's representatives from DCYF, DOC, DSHS, OSPI, WSP. There was a consulting group that was really great at putting all the pieces together and establishing kind of a format of what we're looking for and what we're trying to accomplish. And that information, the plan, it's a very lengthy plan of all good things, was put together and presented to the governor in the summer of this year. So we're still kind of waiting to see what happens from that, but hopefully there will be movement and, you know, we have a plan. Next slide, please. So the turnaround times to complete a background check, and this is for early learning purposes. We've gotten improvements over the past several months and years to our reporting capabilities in the system to where we can really narrow down the turnaround times at each point in the process. So we can look at them and say, hey, what can we do here to make this faster or more efficient? And if there is anything that we can do, we're going to jump on it. So basically, you know, this is based on averages from I think a 6-month period. That's to give us a good idea with the data that we have available. So when DCYF submits the application and a fingerprint appointment notification, that's automatically sent to an individual. So the system is very automated, and thankfully that is within the same day or one day. If it requires staff's attention, they're on it within 30 minutes to an hour. That's the expectation, and that's, you know, typically met unless there's just weird oddballs that we have to look at further, but that's very rare. So typically same or one day, that information to fingerprint is sent to the applicant. As far as the individual scheduling a fingerprint appointment, that's the longest time frame that we're seeing, and that's approximately 11 days. So basically, after that fingerprint appointment information is provided to the applicant, it's taking approximately 11 days for them to schedule their fingerprint appointment. And, you know, that's not pointing the finger at the applicant saying that they're not doing it. It could be other variables. They may not have access to, you know, fingerprint appointment locations, not convenient locations. It might not fit with their schedule. So, you know, there's other variables. And we're really trying to figure out what those are, but that's hard to do. So the turnaround time for when the applicant, after they schedule the appointment, how long it's actually taking them to go in and fingerprint, that's approximately 4 days. And then after they fingerprint, once the fingerprints are sent through DSHS, the FBI, and the Washington State Patrol, that's taking about approximately 2 days for those 3 agencies to get the results and distribute them back to us. Once they come to us, that's where we have staff that are jumping on them as soon as possible, within 30 minutes to an hour. That's the expectation, and most of the time that is met, but of course there are some that might go over due to different factors. Okay. So just a little background of what the background check fees used to look like prior to the fee elimination or the fee reduction, and then eventually the elimination, thankfully. That was a pain point. It wasn't just the fees in themselves that were, you know, of cost to applicants, but it was causing a delay in the process because the fees had to be processed through the system. So we were seeing, you know, 3 to 5 days extra time tacked on to that turnaround time that the fees would have to be processed. And the slide gives you kind of an idea of what the costs were prior to the fee elimination. I'm going to go next slide, please. Okay, so the fee changes that came, they did come in steps, and the 2022 supplemental budget provided some relief to cover the cost of the child care and background check fees for the fiscal year 2023. In 2023, the operating budget included funding to completely eliminate the background check and fingerprinting fees. So that means it costs $0 now for applicants to apply for the background check for early learning purposes. And that includes volunteers, any early learning programs that they're applying for. It does not cost anything for them to apply. So that it didn't just, you know, provide the financial relief, it provided the reduction in turnaround time as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so the changes effective January 1, 2024 that we all know are coming. And that we're, doing what we can to look at those areas where we can make the processes more efficient to eliminate the impact of these changes that are coming, where all subject individuals are going to be required to have that full background check clearance prior to beginning work. They can no longer actually work under the supervision while waiting for the clearance of their background check. And any application received by DCYF on or after January 1, 2024, for childcare or early learning providers, they must have an approved background check clearance for each individual. There are some questions going around about, as far as training and hiring and interviewing and what that process looks like. And I'm not sure if they've sent out the updated newsletter with that information that gives you an idea and answers some of those questions about, who could still train while they're waiting for the background check clearance. And basically the guidance is going to state that, the training and the hiring, the recruiting, that can still occur because they're not going to be on the roster as a working, employee or volunteer. So they can still train, recruit, interview, and hire on site. So we're hoping that will eliminate some of those hard timeframes or staff choosing another job while they're waiting. But it's just, they cannot work unsupervised or with a supervised without that full background check clearance. But that should not impact the training of the individuals.
I'm sorry, did you say that they cannot, without a cleared background check, supervise, they cannot be in the classroom?
So they couldn't work in a classroom, supervised or unsupervised. So basically they can't be on the roster as an employer or volunteer on schedule.
Okay, now that is for 2024?
Correct. Yes, January 1st.
So what about those now that?
So the ones that are currently working now in that capacity that don't have the fully cleared background check. You may be on mute. I can't
Okay,
hear.
so let's just, obviously we wanted to get through and go to the questions at the end, but this is very different from what we have heard before. And I feel like this needs a lot of clarity. When you say they can train, or there's trainings that they can attend, and then there's working with someone is part of what we do for training. So if they are not included in ratio, does that mean that they can train under another employee in the classroom?
Julie, it depends on if you have the space in your facility to supervise access to kids. And so there's a list in the FAQs that lists out. So they can't be counted in ratio. They're not going to interact with kids, right? So you would have to have a spot in your center where they could do training where they didn't have a cleared background in unlicensed space, basically, which not everybody has that space to provide that. And that's why we can't give a blanket answer.
Okay, so you're saying no interaction with kids is what you're saying.
Basically, yes. And they can't be considered in the ratio. They can't be unsupervised. So the days of somebody having an unclear background, but then you can have them in the classroom working with other staff, we can't do that anymore.
I think we all understood that, but there's a difference between training under a staff person and not being in ratio, because you say it's the preschool class, you've got, 17 kids there that day. You've got 2 staff responsible for the room, and then you want your new hire to be able to just follow the lead teacher and see what the procedures are and all that. Allowed or not allowed?
Not allowed. They have to have a cleared background. That's the change.
Okay. All right, so let's continue on, and then we're going to go back to the top of the questions and go through them one by one.
Thank you, Travis, for clarifying. I was about to read the verbatim language in the memo. Thank you. Yeah, it's hard to put a blanket on everything. So that's why just any relief that we could provide, I think that's hopefully helpful. I think we're done with this slide. So if you want to move to the next. Okay,
I'm not sure I was following Julie. Are we kind of going to Q&A now a little bit, or did you want us to finish the slides?
Yeah, let's finish the slides. That's a really hot button topic when that was said. So I felt like we probably still need to come back to it, but let's get through it.
Improvements and developments of the good stuff, hopefully. Because again, we really are trying to work on the things that we can control to make this process as efficient and fast as possible to get people in there, the background check requirements moved. We want to work on the website to provide more detailed information and answers to your questions. We want to upgrade our system reporting capabilities. That's something that's been an ongoing task, and we've made improvements along the way. So we have less manual tracking, more streamlined internal processes, and really eliminating duplicative steps. We found that we can find those things that we're doing wrong or that we could do better by looking at data. It's very helpful. And those small improvements that we make along the way on the daily, anything that we see, any that staff see, I see, other managers see, we're taking a look at it, what we can do more efficiently. Because all of those minutes that we spend doing things that we don't have to or that we could do better, those matter. That can be focused on, completing a background check faster. So there was a pre-filed Senate Bill 5774 where we are proposing to have fingerprinting services in DCYF offices, and that would expand the fingerprinting appointment availability in areas that need it the most, or overcrowded areas where the appointment schedule availability is lacking. We really want to expand that, and that's would resolve not all of our problems, but some of them, to where people who can't find that fingerprint appointment quickly are able to. And just one of those things that we can try to accomplish to eliminate the impact of other changes as much as possible. We're also in collaboration with DSHS constantly. We bug them a lot to work together to see what we can do to reduce our turnaround times, because we are still connected to them. We rely on their system. And one of the things that we propose that we think that would be a big resolution would be to have the Washington State Patrol and the FBI distribute results directly to us, so they aren't going through DSHS. So it's just that extra person, extra agency that, has to take a look at results. We want to eliminate that to where things are coming directly to us. And it might save, just a day or two, but that matters. Every little bit matters at that point, and that's really what we're trying to focus on. All those little things that we can look at and make better to have a big impact. So here I'll just put through in the contact information so people know who to go to and where if they have questions for certain things. I'm not sure if this PowerPoint can be provided to everyone at the end, but just a point place to know if you need help, this is where you go. And the central location is our background check unit that, they are specialized in handling early learning background checks specifically. And this is the email address and the phone number. If you call the phone number, it connects to a voicemail because everybody has cell phones, and that's really the only way that we could have it set up, but they call back very quickly. But of course the email as well, that's the main point place for questions. And I put my contact information if you have any questions related to the background check changes, upcoming, previous or current. we can help you. Either me or the background check manager, Mariah Fabiani. She just started in September. She's really great and helpful. She's learning as well, but she's contributing a lot of improvement ideas. And we have Ann Lemieux, our background check operations manager. It's a little top heavy in the managers, but we need a lot of folks to manage this work and hopefully make it better for you guys.
Okay, was that the last slide?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, thanks, guys. I was gonna say, take note of those phone numbers. Maybe somebody can drop them in the chat since they're not up anymore, but let's jump in. Susan asked which of the checks that we have to do are not required for public school teachers. We only have 30 minutes, so let's see if we can plow through them.
So Meryl, I'm not going to be the expert on this one. Do you happen to, we've discussed before what is in the OSPI check and versus the DCYF. Do you recall?
You're muted.
Sorry, that's an ongoing problem. I'll have conversations all the day long on mute. So I have an RCW actually for what's required of the background checks for school personnel. They require the fingerprint check. The other components, it does not look like that they're required to complete that, including the child abuse and neglect check or the interstate check as well. But I'll also drop that RCW in the chat in response to that question.
That would be great. I think providers have been frustrated by that inequity in, our kids turn 5 and all of a sudden the staff don't have to have child abuse and neglect anymore. Okay, moving on to D, what percentage of checks for childcare are not cleared? Is that data you guys have?
Yes. So based on, and we do a big data report annually at the end of the year where we have everything and we look at everything based on last year's data. And we also track monthly stats as well. But really the average from all of last year's background checks that we completed, only 7% didn't pass. And that includes suitability assessment denials and the permanent disqualifiers too. This year, it's every month, it's pretty much the same. It kind of fluctuates, doesn't really go any higher. I think our lowest point has been a 5% did not pass rate, but it just typically hovers between 7 and 8% that don't pass.
Okay, I'm going to jump about 5 questions forward because it's relevant. Who reviews and makes decisions about suitability?
So that is quite a process. We consider, I'll start with getting the background check result. As soon as the background check result comes in, staff, the background check specialists, they review the criminal history and negative action information, and they compare it to the DCYF secretary's list. If there is a crime that requires a suitability assessment on that list, then they will refer it to our suitability assessment unit. And there are 13 specialists with a lot of experience in case we're assessing for safety, risk, licensing division, all over the map, who complete those assessments. They gather collateral information, police reports if needed, court reports. The most important piece of it we found is the interview with the applicant, because we can see what's on paper, but we want to know what happened. We want to know their perspective. The piece of paper doesn't tell us everything about who somebody is, and they could have made mistakes. We want to see rehabilitation. The assessments really focus on that piece, evidence of changed behavior. They can provide references. They can provide certificates, completing services, rehabilitation. But, talking with the applicant and really getting to know the real change, not what a piece of paper says, is really important to us. And they review family, the child abuse and neglect, history, referrals, anything that's come in. They're working with a lot of information, but what they do is they review all that information and they basically consolidate it and write it up onto one suitability assessment form that they has everything in one place with the information from the interview and all of the other documents they gathered. And they can make the decision to approve an applicant. If they approve, that does have to go through their supervisor. Their supervisor reviews that information as well. And that's a social service specialist 5. And they review that. If they also approve, then they can send out a final decision to approve. If the supervisor feels like that the applicant should be denied, then they will take it up to the background check manager, who will review it. The background check manager can approve after reviewing all the information, but if they feel like they still would like to deny, they send it to me. So I'm kind of like the final bad guy, of the person that gets the ones where, you know, there's a lot of concerns where 2 other people have said, or 3 other people, the specialist, supervisor, and manager have said no. And it, you know, finally comes to me to review it and give that 4th set of eyes and give them a fair shot to still be approved. Typically we're in line with each other. Sometimes we have conversations about it and get different perspectives, but the process is, you know, we've made sure that there's a lot of checks and balances and fairness with prioritizing safety, but also giving folks an opportunity to share who they are now versus what a rap sheet or a piece of paper might tell us.
Yeah, I appreciate hearing about the process there. And just real quick, is there an appeal process then?
Yes, the applicants, when a suitability assessment's denied, which is, you know, it's a small portion, but they can go through the appeal process. They're sent a letter with instructions, detailed instructions on how they can appeal and the time frame. We have a small portion that appeal. I think I've been a part of, for early learning specifically, 4 hearings where applicants, they do show up and engage in the hearing, and it's quite a process, but it gives them a shot. But so far, all of the decisions to deny have been upheld thus far.
Okay, all right, so moving on. Jamie asked, is there a plan to get more vendors or partners to take fingerprints? It's getting the fingerprint appointments that is a challenge in my area and other areas too. Sometimes that can take up to a week or 2.
Yes, that is a part of the proposed bill that I actually got in my email inbox and reviewed just Friday. That's Senate Bill 5774, and that is the proposal to expand the fingerprinting services to DCY offices to have more availability.
How long does it take for a bill like that to pass?
Yeah, I think Matt would probably be better to speak to that process. There's some steps involved for sure.
So there might be an effective date in the draft. I don't have it in front of me, but this is a short session. I believe we wrap up in March. And a lot of times bills take effect July 1st, starting the new state fiscal year.
And there is an emergency clause in the bill as well. I wanted to throw that out there. So it would go into, if it passes, which we really hope that it does, and we're gathering as much information as we can to advocate for it. If it passes, then it has that emergency clause to go into effect as soon as possible.
All right, what would it take to return to rules that allow our industry to have a new hire work under supervision?
Short answer is a change to federal law. I met with my program specialist from Office of Child Care yesterday, and we had this specific conversation. That's what he told me. They think the plain reading of the law is that this is required for all new staff. So there we go.
Yeah, it's frustrating when somebody says they think that's how. I mean, it sounds like that's choosing, it's an interpretation thing. So that's okay. Our state was non-compliant with subsidy rates for years. So was the state fined by the feds during that time?
We were non-compliant for a much shorter time frame than we are currently for the background check, and that was on the horizon. Yeah,
on the horizon. Okay. Okay, a question that's come up again and again. What does DCYF expect licensors to do if when they encounter a new hire working under supervision?
I can answer that. We're going to handle this the same way that we handle it right now. So if we were to come on site and somebody doesn't have a cleared background check, then we'll address it the same way that we would with a compliance agreement, and so that they can come into compliance.
Well, I mean, I guess the question is about the risk level because different things happen for different non-compliant issues. So what is the risk level attached to that? So what would be expected in the moment?
It depends. So are we talking about somebody that's had a cleared background check and now
No.
now it's expired? So we're talking about a new one. So
Yeah.
so then what we would say is that to come into compliance, that individual would have to be off site, right? Until they have a cleared background check or in a space that is unlicensed.
Okay, so that's something that would happen in the moment. It sounds like TA.
Yes, but it is going to show up on IR. It's going to show up on a compliance agreement.
Okay.
Inspection report.
All right. Classroom closures will occur as this is implemented. Is that what licensors will be telling providers to do? And if the center does not comply with closing classrooms, then what?
Again, that's going to be an individual basis. We don't want to close classrooms down or centers down. So we're going to work with providers of how they can get staff that are qualified and have a background to keep the classroom or the center operating is what we're going to do. So we're going to work with folks to see how we can make that happen.
Okay, but you guys have struggled with staffing shortages just like we have. So, I mean,
yeah, and I think some people are struggling. Some people have adequate staff. It's, you know, so that's where we're gonna work with folks to, you know, we don't want to displace kids in this too, right? Like that's.
So let's just say that one of us has a licensor that walks into the building and says, you have somebody on staff working directly with their lead teacher. The new person's not cleared, and you're going to have to send her home right now. And then because you'll be at a ratio, you're going to have to close your classroom right now. And what can the provider say in that moment?
Or can we get somebody else in here? Or is there somebody that can cover in that room? You know, is what it's going to be.
But who's gonna cover, like, where are we gonna find these people?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And if you guys know those answers already, because if you're going to help us find staff, then you should probably tell us that now because we need that information now.
Is there a question? I mean, the quickest way to not get put in that situation is that change your practice of hiring right now, so that when you're hiring folks, you're sending them for a background check before you even do the interview, right? So that they
But why
can get in
would
there.
I do a background check if I know I'm not going to have a job, Travis? That doesn't make any sense. Like, why would I even put out $12 if
The background check is free?
the fingerprinting?
Yes. Yes, it's free.
Okay, but why would I do that and set up my time and wait 11 days to possibly know that I could have a job?
Because if you don't get hired at your center, maybe you get hired at a center down the block or somewhere else. So once you have your background check, you have your background check and you're in the system to be able to have flexibility to go to another site and apply then at that point. And then you can say, when you apply, I already have a cleared background check. And if you had somebody showing up on your doorstep with qualifications and a cleared background check, you're going to hire them.
Travis, that's not a solution because if I'm hiring somebody today, they're going to be expected to be paid while their clearance is being cleared. So what I think DCYF should do is find funding to pay providers so they can pay staff while they're waiting for their clearance check, background check to come through. And in the meantime, we can do training and things of that nature. But this is like an unfunded mandate, and DCYF needs to pony up and help fund childcare centers so we're not in the position of having to pay staff that we can't use in the classroom or be in ratio. This is a lose-lose for childcare providers, And what you're saying is just not acceptable.
And it's very devastating that I don't hear, I mean, I see that this is going on, but what's out there to advocate for what everyone here is doing other than this, of us that's present? Because if they're setting something that in place, I think it should also have something aligned with like employment resources or something like that. Because it's devastating unless the ones that are making these changes, come into a site and actually do the legwork and see what's going on. Changes like these are going to keep happening.
I think the question is, who's pushing back on the federal law? Who's advocating for us in the state of Washington to the federal government on this?
That is a wonderful question.
This is what they need to hear. And
Yeah.
it is absurd. It's absurd that Costco and Cintas and tours and parents and all these people are in our building, and that's okay. But as soon as we say, oh, we want to hire you, they can't be in the classroom, they can't be around kids. It's just weird. Can anybody answer that question? Who's pushing back on this for our state?
Yeah, how is DCYF supporting providers by pushing back on this? That's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
And what are the
dates?
What are the dates, or what is it that we can do to be able to be present and have a voice for what's going on? Because this is affecting children too. We can't be having staff constantly coming in and out of these classrooms. I mentioned earlier, we can't even have licensors. I mean, we are, but it shouldn't even be possible for licensors just to pop up anytime, because this affects the children. We're in this for the children, for stability. Our families don't know everything that's going on, and they're out there working, thinking that we have all this in place, sending their children with educators that probably don't have teachers or the school system or whoever, that don't have the same requirements that childcare educators, making sure that families are having success in their employment and bettering their lives, are having to go through all this. And this is just a short, a small amount of us that are here present. There's many right now actually working with a lot of the children, doing all this legwork. And if it wasn't for us being here, when they get hit with all these requirements going on, it's going to be very devastating.
And Travis, if I remember correctly, wasn't it only a portion of the background check that was required by the Fed, and that Washington State's portion was actually the longer portion? So why can we not do the Fed portion, which I believe aligned with OSPI, and do that first and allow people to be training while we wait for the Washington State portion to be back?
So the background check, there's multiple components with it. When it comes to if an applicant is completing an in-state check and the fingerprint check, those go together. They're like a package deal that go through DSHS and the Washington State Patrol and the FBI, and then comes back to us. So that's how the background checks currently move. That's how they've always moved. And that would require us to go through DSHS IT to see if it's even possible in the system, the Washington State Patrol and the FBI. Is it something we could explore? Of course. But it would take a lot of different changes in different areas and other agencies involved in that process to separate the two. Now, the other components of the background check, the interstate and the child abuse and neglect, as soon as we get the forms we needed from the applicant to request those required components of the background check, we submit that request, we send out the clearance. So we're not waiting for the results to come in, which would be another delay. It's very, very rare that we get a result that would, prompt a change in the decision or require a suitability assessment. So we do complete the background check as soon as we get that fingerprint result, and as long as we have submitted that request to the other state.
So Meryl, this is a question that we've asked for years. Why can't the state and the Fed stuff be separated? Providers have literally been asking for years, because if the federal portion is what's going to cause us to not be able to have people to work under supervision, then it doesn't make sense to keep it together. It puts the burden on providers instead of DCYF saying, okay, let's fix it internally so that we don't have this crisis where classrooms might be closed. So I realize you know, haven't been to one of these meetings and probably don't know that providers have asked this over and over, but we have been. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the chat. We talked about the turnaround time. It sounds like there's a bill to address some of that maybe. Let's see, is there a way that a provider can be updated throughout the process while they're waiting for their new hire to clear? I think that's maybe a quick one to answer.
Really quick, Julie, I can do my homework on what's been previously asked and I can ask again, you know?
Yeah.
Why not? It could be different. I think that with changing technology, why not ask again? It's worth a shot.
Thank you. Thank you. So currently directors do not get any notification of where an applicant is in the process. So this is something that they're asking for. So it'd be great if you guys would make a note of that and try to figure out a way to update, you know, the director, maybe through the merit system, that it could just show more about where they are in the process. Let's see, Susan said the way the slide is presented, it places the responsibility squarely on the individual for the 11-day time frame. To fairly represent the 11 days, please include the barriers that contribute to the time frame. I think that's really important to have on the slide what those barriers are, because it is not, many of us have experienced delays because of appointment availability, or only the place is only being open certain days of the week or things like that. Okay, if an in-home childcare provider has a child with severe disability and they're unable to physically do the finger background check, but have done the regular check, what accommodations can be made?
I'm sorry, Julie, could you repeat that one?
It says if an in-home provider has a child with a severe disability and they're physically unable to do the background check, it sounds like maybe they can't go by themselves to the background check. But they've done the regular I'm not really sure. Maybe this is someone that you could reach out to directly.
We work through those on an individual basis. So it comes up if an individual is not able to get background checks, we can do waivers or some sort of way to handle that. We've done that with folks that are, you know, elderly parents or different situations. So we work through.
Okay, and this is where that slide was really helpful about the phone numbers and emails for the folks in the background check unit. Maybe we can put that up again. Let's see, this does not factor in when someone schedules an appointment, goes to the appointment, find out that the appointment has to be rescheduled due to lack of personnel at the fingerprinting office. We've heard that story time and time again. So that's also, it'd be great if you guys were tracking the 11, what is happening during the 11 days. Because the burden should not be, because, you know, it should not be presented that it took the provider that long, because that's not typically what's happening in our experience anyway.
Right. And I think that could, you know, require us to do some sort of study and reaching out to applicants and getting feedback to gauge what the main pain point is. And also with the fingerprint exception process, if somebody is physically unable to actually go and fingerprint, they can reach out to that email address. And there's a certain process where we take a look at the circumstances and we forward it up to the administrator for either FFN or for childcare licensing to make a determination as well. They're a part of that. So it is considered on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, because yeah, while we're thankful that the 3 to 5 days was eliminated because of the payment issue, we need that 11-day leg eliminated. And I think appointment availability would be the way to tackle that first anyway.
And I just wanted to
Okay.
add, you don't have to do research or get data to change the slide so that it accurately reflects that it's not on the individual. It's a numerous factors that contribute to that, and the individual is the least of that problem. So I don't think it's we need to have you do any studies, just fairly represent it so that childcare providers are represented in the true sense of how this is impacting us, not in the blaming of the individual, which is what it looks like.
Put the variables in there, that it's due to multiple different variables, not as a talking point, but in the actual slide.
Absolutely.
Yep. Okay, so I'm jumping down a bit because we did cover some of that other stuff. So is the state description of entry point work emphasize to people to get their check before they apply for work? Seems like it lands in the employer to absorb the delays without a staff member on the team. Yes, that is true. We talked about that. Okay. Jen asked about the federal policy. I think we covered that. Can they be in a licensed space? Oh, we already covered that. What about parents that come, spend time in a classroom, trying to get a feel for the program, visiting to get their child used to it? Yeah, how long can a person be in the classroom without that background check?
Yeah, so there's some federal guidance that points to volunteers, but I think the principle that they get to is the same. As long as the contact is irregular or infrequent, then they're saying that the background check requirement doesn't apply. So obviously there's a big gray area there, but there's a principle that sort of guides when they think the threshold's been crossed, you know? So I guess what that says to me is that, like, for parents, this isn't applicable. As long as they're not in there constantly, basically being a part of the childcare situation, I would think that that doesn't apply.
Okay, and also Dawn talked about interviewing. A lot of us do several steps to an interview. One of those steps is the in-person, in-classroom, not part of the ratio, under supervision interview. So it sounds like that would fall into the gray area. Would you agree?
Well, the interesting thing about the federal rule is they say that a person can't start work. So there's a question about when that actually happens. And that's a matter of like employment law, but again, a gray area. I would think a person who's just there for an interview, that's kind of a corner case where you could argue that the federal requirement doesn't apply there. And I think that's valid.
Okay.
And licensing is not going to enforce that.
Yeah, I think the other part is what's practical to enforce and what's a corner case and what is squarely within, what you can expect to happen.
Okay.
I have a comment. I've been raising my hand. This is Gloria about the background check, like the 11 days. I think when we have staff and the staff stop working with us, we have to close one room, and that is not fair. Or for example, I had capacity for 12 kids, and one of my staff moved on and didn't let me know. Only the next day, didn't come and call, I'm done. I don't want to call parents and say, do you know, don't bring your, to 6 parents, don't bring your kids because I don't have staff. I have to see who is going to come to cover for one day while you all start processing all the requirements. I don't want to invite somebody who has a bad history. Mostly in family home cares, we know people who been raising with them for too long. We trust in that person. We don't want to bring somebody who has a past with is going to affect our licenses. We trust in that people. Only we're going to support them to do the process. That person is not going to be waiting for 11 days to start working and start receiving pay. Also, those parents, they don't going to be waiting for 11 days with no working because it's a lot of problem right now to find accessibility to child care. I think we have to be a little more conscious about that. 11 days is too many days, but also it's more than 11 days. For example, right now I had a person who's going to apply, who's going to open a daycare. She sent the email 2 weeks ago for the background check. It's waiting for the appointment. It's not happening, and it's most of this situation has been for many years. I think we have to do a different process. Also, in family home cares, when we bring a new staff, we never let them unsupervise. We working together because we have one big room in here, and we working together. We never let that staff, that new hired, along with kids until they learn the routine, they have all the training required. We know he's prepared or she's prepared. Mostly they are females. She's prepared to be a teacher assistant. I think we have to change a little bit about these requirements. I know everything the federal government decide, but it's affecting us. It's affecting families. It's affecting, we've been in many groups advocating retention staff. We don't pay good salaries because we don't earn good. And we are with these many requirements. I don't want to promise somebody I'm going to hire you, but you need to do this and this for 11 days and wait and do this many trainings after I start paying you, because I cannot pay somebody who is not working in my daycare. It's only taking training. I think we have to do something now to have access for those professionals who want to be in this environment. We don't want to be irresponsible about bringing people who affect our children. And also, I am a little cautious. Maybe I'm going to sound a little, I don't want to be racist, okay? But I work with families. I didn't know the background of those families. I know we're working with unstable families. I don't feel comfortable to invite parents to come and be like volunteers in my daycare because I didn't know their past. I didn't know how is their past experience, and I don't want them to be around my other kids because the background checks exactly and about decisions. So it's a little contradiction in here. The staff has to be a background check, that I agree, but not for waiting too long. But parents, be volunteers, don't have background checks. That, I don't know, that didn't make sense. And also a person who plans to work in this field, they really know we're going to request the background check. They didn't know where they come. That's why they scam. So I don't know how we can fix this situation, because it's on and on and on, and it's not a easy access. I'm
That's
really
true. I'm
really
sorry,
protect the
Lori, but
children.
we've got to move on. We're running out of time. We had a ton of questions left. We're not going to be able to get through them. I'm hoping CE can make a list of them so that we can get them submitted to Matt and Meryl, and we can get it back before the next meeting. But I know that we need to move on because we've got the healthcare benefits folks here for that. So unfortunately, we've run out of time on background checks. Clearly, it's something we need to revisit and have more time with. So hopefully you guys will come back for a future meeting. Go ahead. Katie, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Hi. All right, we are going to jump to the healthcare program. Department is closing the healthcare of the Yakima area, and then a new one is coming through the program online. So here to present that is Nicole Rose and Joan Altman. So you guys.
It looks like Joan might not be on yet. So we might be, unless you all are seeing her and I am not. So we could take another moment if you would like, it's or for background check questions, and let me try and find Joan. Does that work?
That would be great. Yeah. And I know Erin had said that we could do some kind of a follow-up survey regarding the background checks. I think that would be really great to send out. And I still think we need to have a follow-up meeting. The next meeting would be in February and the rule would have taken place by then, I think that's, if, there's Joan.
There she is.
Was I making Nicole sweat?
Well, I said your name and then you appeared. I just didn't want to. I didn't want to take away from all of the great things you're going to share, Joan.
Time-honored way to summon me into meetings.
Oh, sorry, Katie already introduced you, not realizing you weren't here. So you guys are welcome to jump right in.
Oh, that's great. Nicole, is there anything you want to start to set this up? And I'll project the report well, if there are any introductory remarks that you'd want to make first.
Sure, of course. So I think one of the things I just want to say is thank you to Joan and team for their partnership throughout the last, gosh, almost 2 years now, I think, around the work related to healthcare. And I think we're really glad to have the opportunity today to share some data around what is happening. I think sometimes there's some myths out there around access to care, and we'll be able to talk through all of that and talk about the great work that the Yakima Valley navigators have done to really assist access to statewide health care. And so I'm going to turn it over to Joan to walk us through that.
Great. And I'm not sure if someone could help me monitor the chat so I can help address any questions that come up. That would be ideal. Can you all see the premium assistance for employees of licensed childcare facilities up there?
Yes.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, and feel free to keep me honest on time. I'm going to try to allow time for as many questions as I can at the end in case folks have them. Okay, well, hi, I'm Joan Altman. I direct government affairs and strategic partnerships at the Exchange. I would say the partnership with DCYF has been one of the most fruitful and one of the most strategic we've had in recent years. I've been at the Exchange for going on 11 years now. And this was one of the more exciting programs that we put together in a pretty short amount of time that's resulted in real people being able to access care, which is great, and has resulted in a lot of new partnerships with a lot of you on this call. So thank you. The healthcare space is new for us. And as a result of what has happened with this program, there are now several other kind of provider organizations and associations from different segments across Washington looking at a similar type of model. So this has really been a first and something that has been looked to nationally as well. So what are we here to talk about today? We received funding and sort of direction from the legislature in 2021 to stand up a special premium assistance program just for employees of licensed childcare facilities. While this program has been going on for employees of licensed childcare facilities, a broader state subsidy program has passed and been implemented for everybody up to 250% of the federal poverty level. So as the federal funding for just this program is winding down, and we've sort of are winding down the special premium assistance program just for childcare workers at the end of this year, we've been ramping up this other state subsidy program. And so we're getting a lot of questions about how the programs interact. So sort of big high level takeaways for everyone on this call, and then we'll step through the report. One, on December 31st, the premium assistance for the 850 or so childcare workers who are currently in the program will end. Their coverage, their health insurance coverage through the Exchange will continue for 2024. For some people, their premium will be zero. For some, they'll have to start newly paying a premium. Some will qualify for existing subsidies other than this special program, and some will not. So we'll talk through what that looks like. The ongoing enrollment assistance that's free and available in multiple languages is continuing. Coverage is continuing. Federal and state subsidies continue to be available. This program specifically, the funding allocated for it is ending at the end of the year. So that's sort of the high level picture. What do we know from this program? We have a lot of good data that we've never had in the past. So we know that there are about 40,000 licensed childcare employees in the state. We know that about half of them are now getting health insurance through Health Plan Finder, either through Medicaid or through the private plans available through the Exchange. We know that the people that are participating in this special premium assistance program are more diverse than the rest of our population. We know they're younger. We know that they have a higher likelihood of being Hispanic. We know that a majority of the participants are women. So lots of good information on who's coming in and who's newly accessing healthcare. We know that after this premium assistance program ends, 90% of the people who are participating will continue to qualify for some level of financial assistance to help lower the costs of their 2024 coverage. And we know that people will continue to rely on Yakima to help them get enrolled and help them evaluate their coverage options. So this report is online, and I'll make sure everyone on the call has the link if you don't already. But here's the statistic I was just talking about. Of the 40,000 employees working in licensed childcare facilities in Washington, we know there are about 20,000 who are covered either in Washington Apple Health, which is a majority of them, or in a private health plan, also called a qualified health plan through the exchange. This segment right here, this 850 people, those are the people who are currently in this special premium assistance program that we're going to be talking about how we're transitioning. People want to know where the 850 people are. There's a map here. I'll sort of walk you through some of the data first, and we can come back to the rest of this later. But of the 850 people who are in, it represents people in 34 out of Washington's 39 counties, but most people are in King, Pierce, Snohomish, and Spokane. So there's a map here that shows you where most people who are participating in the program are located. And for reference, hopefully I'm not making everyone sick here, but for reference, at the end of this report, we included a county level chart. We're getting questions from stakeholders about where people are. So you can look up in your county how many people there are who add to the, it's just short of the 840 because we didn't have information on everybody for 2024. But in the back here, we show you where everyone is and what level of premium assistance it looks like they'll be eligible for. So we know we're focusing outreach to everybody who's participating in the program so far. We've provided sort of outreach in September and October and November. This is the Yakima Neighborhoods Health Services, who's our navigator organization, who's trained by the exchange and is providing outreach and enrollment assistance to all childcare workers across the state. They're reaching out individually to all of the 850 folks. We've also sent letters and emails, and DCYF has done some outreach as well. So folks are have received multiple communications from us about the premium assistance ending, what their new coverage for 2024 looks like, how much they owe, if anything, to continue their coverage. So we know that everyone is going to sort of continue on with their coverage. We know that there may be some people who drop the coverage because they can't afford it. Otherwise, everyone will have to start paying for their January premiums and so on to maintain their coverage. So anyone who's working with childcare workers, or if you yourself are someone who's interested in what your options are through the exchange, how your coverage might be changing for 2024, the phone number and the email, direct email for Yakima is included in the report and otherwise available. Just highly encourage everyone to email or call us. December 15th is the cutoff. We're at December 13th. By December 15th at midnight, if you do not already have coverage and you want coverage that starts January 1st, now is the time. December 15th is the cutoff for January 1st coverage. So anyone who you work with who still needs to come in and get covered, or maybe wants to switch their health plan to something that's a little bit cheaper, now's the time to come in and do that. After December 15th, folks have until January 15th to take action. And anyone who newly signs up by January 15th would get coverage starting February 1st. So big takeaway here, one big deadline is December 15th. The next big deadline and the end of open enrollment is January 15th. In that window, we're hoping everybody who needs to in the child worker community reaches out to Yakima and gets help either signing up or changing plans or otherwise evaluating their options. The question we're getting most often is, okay, this temporary program is ending. What does that mean? And what does that look like in terms of premium prices for everybody? That is our number one. So we sort of tried to address that here, and happy to take questions as they arise. Premium prices vary based on where you live and how old you are and how many people are in your family. So everything that we included in the report is sort of illustrative. And that's why it's so important for people to come in and check their actual account or work with the navigators in Yakima to figure out what your exact premium pricing is. But broad strokes, we think that about, I mean, we can see, and these are actual numbers based on what people's eligibility is for 2024. But you'll see there are a couple of places where the amount might vary. So in the upper right-hand side of this, the upper right-hand graph, this is the breakout of the 850 or so people. You see that about 460 are eligible for both Cascade Care Savings and APTC, which are the federal subsidies. And so these 460 people will continue to have a $0 monthly premium. So they're going from the DCYF program where they were paying $0 to other available federal and state subsidies where they will be paying $0. So that's good news for over half the people in the program today. There's another group of people, there's sort of this 32%, this 119 plus 133, who are receiving either a state subsidy or a federal subsidy, but not both. Those people, generally speaking, we show in the report pricing for a 37-year-old, because that was the average age of the people in the program. It'll be a little bit higher or lower depending on your age, but about $150 a month in premium is what that 30% of people will need to pay. Again, recognizing that going from $0 to $150 a month is a lot, particularly for people who are under 250% of the federal poverty level, but still a significant savings from the pricing for if you were to receive no subsidy. And that's the 81 people on the right. These non-subsidized 81 people over here on the right. If you look down to what they'll need to be paying, they'll need to be paying, you know, close to $400 a month. Those are the people that we're most worried about who won't be able to continue to afford coverage. We're the most worried about those people dropping coverage. And again, you know, the pricing on the exchange has gone, our private health plans have charged more and more. We're working with the legislature to try to bring down costs for everybody on the exchange. But again, that 400 we have concerns about. So just generally speaking, before we sort of turn it over and Nicole, see if there's anything you want to add or if there are any other questions, 90% will kind of continue to qualify for some level of assistance. About 60% will continue to pay $0 premiums. Around, you know, 30% will have a premium increase in that $100 to $200 range. So they'll be paying $100 to $200 a month to maintain their coverage. And then for the remaining 10%, you know, looking at the cost for the lowest cost Cascade Care Silver plan available to them, they'll be looking at around $400 a month. So we are sort of continuing to reach out and make sure people, one, have continued coverage, two, that they understand what the plan prices and plan premiums look like. If they need to switch to a lower cost plan, we want to help them do that. And then three, looking to further understand and track how many people lose coverage. We think that's something that will be of interest to the legislature as they take a look this session about, you know, whether it's something they'd want to continue or whether, you know, those resources are going to be invested in other childcare initiatives that I know are moving in other spaces. Nicole, I'll pause there and see if there's anything else I missed or should be focused on, and then we can see if there are any questions from folks.
Yeah, there's a couple questions in the chat. No, I think that's good. I think really, I think the main thing here is we want folks to continue to call Yakima and get assistance in helping them navigate and find the plan that best meets their needs. And I dropped that information in the chat.
Oh, thank you so much.
There was some questions about, you know, a staff member was told their premium was $750. How could that be? And I think some of that may be what is the individual circumstance. And then it looks like there's some questions just about licensed family home providers and union benefits. And I can take that one in a moment. I don't know, Joan, if there's anything you want to say about the $750 premium.
Yeah, I would say, you know, the Affordable Care Act didn't eliminate age banding. So the premiums typically get up to $700, $800 One, if you have a large family size, so if you're looking to cover, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people, it can get upwards of that amount. Or if you're someone who's pre-Medicare, looking for coverage in your late 50s or early 60s, under the federal law, health insurance carriers can charge more for people who are older. So if you have a couple that say, 58 and 60 looking for health coverage, we do see premiums that can get upwards of $600 and $700. So again, that's to the extent that that person would want to call Yakima and confirm that there's not a lower cost plan available to them in their area. That's a perfect example of someone we would recommend call Yakima. And to the extent that that's the pricing that is available, we could, again, sort of keep an eye on whether those folks are able to continue to afford coverage or not.
Yeah, Joan, that was my question. This is Katie. And my employee did call Yakima quite a few times. And actually, she had them on speakerphone in our office, and they weren't very helpful. And they weren't very open to, because she's going from 0 being on the plan for 2023. And it's her spouse, and 2 daughters.
Yep.
From 0, and then all of a sudden, $2,000 or $750. And both her and her spouse work for me. They don't make buco bucks. They work in a daycare.
Yep.
So,
and Katie, they probably make enough that they don't qualify for Medicaid, which is great because the wage you're paying them. But then if you're over income for Medicaid, that's where then it becomes more expensive.
Okay.
Katie, if you have, you can also, my email contact's available here. If your employee wants to send me their application ID number, I can just double check here that to see if there's anything that folks may have missed. But Yakima's we work pretty closely with them behind the scenes on each of these cases. So again, just happy to look at her application ID and make sure.
Okay, and she was also told the first time she called that the plan was ending the 15th of December, not the 31st. So that was a scare, and we ended up calling WCCA to help us figure out what was going on with that, because that's what she was told by somebody in the Yakima department. So
yeah, unless she's sort of reporting a change, ending mid-month it would be atypical unless there was some other change reported on the application that would have maybe triggered that. So happy to look into those individual circumstances, but generally speaking, everybody who's enrolled in coverage now has that coverage through the end of December. And then your new coverage picks up starting January 1st and then continues as long as you're able to continue paying the premium.
Okay.
But yeah, I work closely with Genevieve, who's our outreach manager and oversees the contract with Yakima. So I'll flag it for her as well. It's really helpful to hear stories about interactions and service levels that can help address it. So appreciate it.
It was definitely just, nope, this is what it is. And, she's going from 0 to, well, you have to pay $750. And it's like, well, they can't afford that.
Yeah.
So that's a huge jump for their family.
Yeah, no, I totally understand.
No, they can't afford it. So we're trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah. Yeah, healthcare pricing, it's terrible. And we're doing our best in terms of affordability to bring it down, but heard and appreciate it.
Thank you.
Nicole, did you want to address the other question as well?
Yes, I'm happy to do that. And so one of the things I want to clarify about licensed family home providers that are able to access healthcare through the union, while you're interacting with state staff right now to help with enrollment and some of those things, that those health plans are actually negotiated with the Health Benefits Trust. The state does not negotiate those plans. So if there are things that you would like to see differently about those health plans, that's a great conversation for you to be having with the union. The state does not negotiate access to what those plans are. So just wanted to clarify that.
And I also should clarify too, Katie, in light of your comment, and I think something I'm seeing in the chat around data from Susan around, do you have data about people covered by ESI? I wish we did. So the things we can see through our system are who's come back in and gotten coverage through our system, which is Medicaid and private health insurance coverage. We, for years, have wanted information from employers so that we can see who truly is falling into that gap where you're not eligible, you're uninsured. I will say there's also sort of an unfortunate part of the Affordable Care Act or the federal law is that if you are an employer who's doing the right thing and offering your employee some affordable healthcare coverage, it prevents them from coming on the exchange and benefiting from the federal subsidies. So there's this dance that employers are sort of left doing, particularly small employers, around, well, if I give you, a livable wage, then I'm pricing you out of Medicaid. And if I'm giving you an affordable insurance option, I'm negating my ability to have you come get more affordable coverage on the exchange. So something we've also flagged for the feds to say, look, you're putting small employers in this pretty untenable position and you need to do better. So I'm hoping that maybe there's some movement at the federal level on that too, because I think what some employers are ending up doing is like offering health insurance coverage, but at a exorbitant rate so that it's considered non-affordable. So then their employee can come on the exchange and get federal subsidies. And that's just too much of a dance for anyone to be doing. So we're working on a business calculator to try to help make this more transparent, and then leaning in there as well on the small business side.
Yeah, I had looked into offering insurance for my employee, gosh, like 2-3 years ago. I think I talked with Julie about this, and I think it was $21,000 a month for me to have to pay for insurance for all my staff, which obviously I can't afford. I mean, that is
these small group plans have gotten really unaffordable as well.
Yeah, and so it's absolutely. I mean, I have to pay out of pocket as an owner director, and I mean, my new premium for 2024 is $1,700. So can we afford it barely? But we have to have insurance.
Yeah.
So I know Julie was asking, you had mentioned the larger families like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wanting clarity on that, I think just with having the higher premium, the more people that are on it, the higher the premium is considered, right?
Yeah, and the easiest way is to have folks come in to Health Plan Finder and see, just it's so specific to where you live and what the composition of your family is. But generally speaking, the age banding is 1 to 3. So if you're someone who's younger, it's $100, and you're someone who's 50 plus, it'll be $300. And if you're somewhere kind of in your 40s, it's in the middle. So it's generally a curve that's like a 3-to-1 ratio, depending from youngest to oldest. And but again, so many factors in there in terms of what you may qualify for, that it's hard to provide estimates.
Yeah. Okay, Jamie, you have your hand up. What's your question?
I am one of those 10% that went from 0 as a single parent. And I get it. I understand that I make too much to qualify for any subsidies, but don't make enough to actually pay for health insurance. So now I have to go on my employer's exorbitant health insurance plan.
Jamie, it sucks.
And it does suck. But what I'm really worried about is the rising cost of the rise of minimum wage. And some of our people, and now Bellingham is one of those cities that has a mandate in effect that we pay a certain amount of money above minimum wage. So it's $1 this year and it'll be $2 the following year, which is, good for them, except what it does is it prices them out of these programs. And so here I am trying to offer my staff a livable wage, but then it means they can't get health insurance coverage. Is there any movement at all to look at going towards the state median income? Because it's a huge difference between federal poverty level and state. Our state has the highest minimum wage in the country, yet we're still using the federal poverty level to determine whether they get health care or food assistance, and it's killing them. And so do is there anybody I could advocate to? Is there anybody I could write letters to? I know this is not you, and I know
Joan, can you fix this tomorrow?
The stories are all helpful, and they're things that we pass on as we're talking to legislators and people who are contemplating these types of issues. At the federal level, the premium assistance goes up to 400% of the federal poverty level, which gets you kind of closer. And then under COVID, they actually extended it. So people who are in that more median middle income range can get federal assistance now. And there's going to be a big fight at the end of 2025 about whether that continues or not. But at the federal level, they sort of recognized as part of under the Affordable Care Act that setting something even at 400% of the federal poverty level was missing people. At the state level, the federal poverty level limit that they set for this program at 300%, I think they backed into based on available federal funding. So I think it was less about aligning to some sort of federal limit and more about what's the pot of money we have and who can we afford to cover. And they sort of picked a cutoff point. Going forward, if there are people who are right over that cliff, right over that 250% FPL cliff or 300% cliff who are getting hosed. I think it helps them to hear from folks who are experiencing that so they know sort of in a very real way what that pain point is for people.
Okay. I want to get to more people with their hands up. Do you have a few more minutes to stay on, Joan?
Sure, happy to.
Okay. Lorena, I think you have been the longest with your hand up.
Thank you. Yes, really quick. Thank you for all the information about the insurance and same thing as Katie here in Yakima. I'm from the Yakima area, and we've been hearing a lot of misinformation. Last month, people try to go into the health insurance and they told them, "Oh, we already ran out of funds," and also some, not all of the providers, but some of them have their spouse working with them as an assistant, and they try to get their health insurance, and they told them that they don't qualify because they're a spouse. I don't know if that's something that it's written down that okay, because you're married to a provider and they make such a amount of money, they do not qualify for health insurance. Well, the reason why they're working as an assistant is the same way that any other assistant will be working with a provider. I don't see any difference on that because they don't have any other income besides the income that they get from the provider. I don't know if you can answer that question.
Yeah, Lorena, that's really helpful. Again, Yakima is your best resources. I can say that, we had the funding for the program at least through the end of December. The funding ends at the end of December. It's continued through December. So if someone's signing up now for coverage starting in January, it's correct information that the additional financial assistance through this program won't be available starting January 1st. But otherwise it would have been available. And then, yeah, the program was specifically for any employee of a licensed childcare facility in the state. So if you are someone where there are multiples of those people in your household, that would have still applied. That being said,
where do I get that information so that we can take that in, because that's what they were told here in the Yakima office. That's what they were told, that they did not qualify because they were living at the same household as the provider.
Okay. Yeah, Lorena, that's another, to the extent, again, and Nicole and folks have my email, the sort of application ID is the most useful thing because it's not PII and it's something that I can follow up with staff on here. So again, happy to look at specifics of any individual cases that people feel like they just want to make doubly sure they're getting the right info. And Joan, there's so many individual circumstances that apply here that it's hard to sort of.
And Joan, on this one in particular, it sounds like this may be a union healthcare piece as well, so we may need to partner on this one.
Yeah.
And so I'm happy to do that. And I apologize, I have to jump off, but I'm glad that Joan.
Okay. Thank you, Nicole. Jacqueline, do you have a quick question?
Sí, regresando un poquito a lo de la aseguranza, yo escuché a Joan que dijo que si la aseguranza la teníamos un poco más mejor cuando la movía o la tenía la unión, y yo puse que cuando ya el Estado agarró la aseguranza para proveerla, estaba un poquito menos las cosas que nos ayudaban, porque quiero hacerle la pregunta a ella. Entonces, ¿cómo podemos negociar lo de la aseguranza. La unión tiene que negociar los beneficios de la aseguranza.
And I'll look on the call for, I speak terrible French and a little bit of sign language and
No,
Jack,
Brian's here.
that is
We
what I
have an
can do.
interpreter here.
Oh, even better. Brian, help us.
You are muted.
We might not be able to hear Brian, but he might be able to type it into the chat and we can capture it and get back to you, Jacqueline. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Hodan, you have a quick question?
Yes, I do. Thank you. No, I was just wondering, I was just reading the slides and it says the benefit was offered for childcare facilities only. And I was just wondering, why not for in-home care providers? You know, and if you have not included this time, if you guys get any funding coming up, would that be folks that you should add it to the list as well?
Yeah, I would say, DC, there have been several groups that have reached out to the legislature in the wake of this program to say, what about X, Y, and Z groups? And so we're sort of waiting to see, we sort of took legislative direction on which groups were in and out based on what they felt like their budget was. So again, happy to sort of work with folks as needed on if the legislature is interested in sort of expansions into other groups. That's something that we're always happy to support.
Okay. And then is that all for him? That's still here.
Well, Brian put up the comment.
Oh, okay. Negotiate the insurance is through the state or union, which she had said the union.
I think,
Correct.
yeah, I'll say what I know and then I'll probably have to leave you all, but I think there were two different programs that were sort of established by the legislature. One is, or not, that have been stood up. One is sort of through the Health Benefit Trust and the negotiated rates for coverage that the Health Benefit Trust negotiates with the state. And then the second is for all employees of licensed childcare facilities. And I don't know why that was the universe of people who were selected. I'm the worst person to ask because all these different segments of all these different groups just confuse me, and I rely on Nicole for that. But that was stood up for all employees of licensed childcare facilities up to 250% of the federal poverty level, funded through a different federal grant. So you kind of have these two concurrent programs that were going on. The negotiated coverage through the Health Benefits Trust is continuing and something that's part of state negotiations in an ongoing way. This temporary program for this broader group of people is the one where the federal funding source is ending, and so the program's ending. The state could continue to sort of supplement those federal funds with state funds if they were available. And otherwise, we'll just roll everybody into the existing available federal subsidies and state subsidies that we have for everyone, regardless of what segment of the, you know, what your profession is or where you work. We'll take care of as many people as we can through those existing funding sources, and then wait to hear whether anything else is going to get stood up that's specific to one group or another. I hope that helps. And Katie, I'm going to jump to the next, but really appreciate the opportunity to come chat.
Yeah.
And really encourage people to continue contacting Yakima, to the extent you get information from Yakima that's confusing or doesn't seem to quite align with what you were expecting. I'm going to put the email in chat of my colleague Jenny, who is the one who works the most closely with them and can triage with staff. You know, anyone who wants to send me something in the meantime can, but I'm going to just drop in her chat.
That would be great. I think that'd be very helpful. Because there's quite a few of us that have heard the same thing of no fun.
Claro que sí, lo voy a poner en el chat y para que pueda, es sobre la aseguranza que tenemos las proveedoras, no los empleados.
Okay, I think, this is Gloria, I think what Jacqueline tried to say before, when we have the insurance through our union and the union manage that, we had a better coverture or better benefits, since the insurance moved to be to the state, because the state is managing that now, is getting less services. That's covering less services like we had before. That is, I believe that is the question from Jacqueline. Jacqueline, lo que usted preguntaba, que cuando nosotros la aseguranza
Sí,
la
correcto,
teníamos-
Gloria.
yeah, she said that is correct. That is her question. Why benefits were less right now and before, when the union was managing that insurance, we had better benefits. And I agree with Jacqueline, because many providers has been saying the same thing.
Yeah, and that's one, I'm sorry, that's one I'd have to kind of defer to Nicole and DCYF, since I'm not as familiar with the union
The
negotiated.
union
plans.
negotiating,
Yeah.
okay. And I think
Sorry.
that's something we all learned, that it's not the state that does that, that's the union. So that's good to know today, I think, for all of us. So we're not hounding the state and DCYF, that it's actually the union. So
They need to reach out to their union rep.
yeah. Well, I want to thank you for your time, Joan. I mean, this was
No, thank you. I really
helpful.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Happy
Thanks
holidays.
for everything you all are doing for,
Okay.
you know,
Gracias.
everyone
Yeah.
in Washington. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Don't take off, guys, until you take the survey about the meeting. Jessica put it in the chat. As you see, the next meeting's February 14th, and they're going to be emailing out a list after this meeting of all of the upcoming dates for 2024. So watch your email. Take the survey. Thanks for being here. Have a great day.
Bye, guys. Happy holidays.